Okay, it's June 2nd, and all politics are local are here to speak to you, to let you know what's going on in the community. And your hosts for tonight are myself, Donna K, and we have Kaleena, who's also one of our hosts, and we will be holding down the show, I should say, while everybody is doing the dues. May, June, and July just brings a host of activities, anywhere from proms to graduations to scholarship gatherings to weddings. It's just a whole lot going on. And because we haven't been able to do it for a long time, it's like we're double down and doing it more, and more people are just excited about getting out. So, Cleva, tell me, what's been going on with you?
Nothing, everything and nothing.
All at the same time.
Yes, all at the same time. Nothing, different, nothing negative, all good things. Recently started as the executive director of Newark Youth Career Pathways. So we are in the midst of planning end of the year celebrations at all of our schools and an NYCP honors event June 13th, and just loads of stuff, grant writing and wrapping up the school year. So it is a busy, busy time, but glad to be here and glad to be here with you, Donna. We don't need the guys. We got this.
We got this. Oh, we just had Annette. Where did she go? That's right.
I'm still
Oh,
here.
there she go. Look at that. Okay, I was telling somebody the other day, you're like the Fantastic Four. Who was the Fantastic Four? It was like an invisible person, a stretch person, but so Annette, you were the person that could just go invisible. You just like, where did that just go? So, and then I know you're not going to be long, so I do want to
No.
start the hour with you're with Chairman Hamm. His mother has gone on to glory, and I understand that you guys are celebrating her life. And
Yeah.
so, can we just take a pause just for a moment for Larry Hamm's mom?
Right. So I had the opportunity to go to the funeral, the homegoing services of Teresa Burton, a beautiful woman. I only met her in person one time at the celebration, the Human Rights Awards that Larry received in Washington, D.C. with the NEA, National Education Association, some years ago. But since then, in the writing of the book, Larry Hamm's autobiography, I had an opportunity to have really long conversations with her about how she came to find Larry after 40 years of searching for him. As most people know, Teresa Burton is the biological mother of Larry Hamm. He did not know until he was 44 years old that he was even adopted, until
Wow.
his mother that raised him um, uh, basically told him, she was in a nursing home, and she told him that Ham, I'm trying to remember her first name. It just went out of my mind. It starts with the G. It just went right out of my mind. I can almost see it. It'll
Uh-huh.
come to me in a minute. I'm getting old.
You
But
got a lot of stuff in the head that you're
oh
working on.
man,
That's
it's
that's
crazy.
what it is.
But she
Mrs. Ham. So,
basically told, right, Mrs. Ham told him that she had adopted him, kind of, some years ago. And there's a story, it's in the book, about how that came about. Things were done a little differently back in the 1940s and 50s. So it was interesting. But Teresa did meet Mrs. Ham and her
God
husband
bless you.
um, before they were adopted. She met them briefly,
Uh-huh.
um, and
Now, Teresa is
yeah, Teresa
Larry's
is his biological mother.
biological mother. Okay.
Right.
So, and
So
her last name is Burton.
yes.
Okay.
So he finds this out he on his 44th birthday, basically. And so it kind of blew his mind, but
Mm.
it was a few months later when Mrs. Hamm passed away. And he and his family, his daughters, got to know his biological mother. They had 25 years. And
Wow.
I told the daughters that, they really blessed Teresa in ways that they probably don't begin to understand.
Mhm.
The children, the grandchildren, and then the great grandchild, um, I'm going to have I have his name here. The great grandchild, Eli Clark. Okay, she had an opportunity to meet her great grandson, and so it's just it was a beautiful thing just seeing all three. I had never seen all four of them together. The all
Mm.
three daughters and Larry together. We actually I made sure we took pictures.
So you're saying Larry, his two daughters plus Miss
Three
Burton,
daughters.
and his
Three daughters.
biological mothers. You said three daughters?
No, he has three daughters.
Three daughters, okay.
Right, Liani,
Yvonne. Uh-huh.
Nia, and Amani. He has three
Okay.
daughters. Um, and so and I saw all three of them together with their father, and it was just beautiful, just seeing all of them
Okay.
together. But they had an opportunity to really grow close to their grandmother and know them. I think they got to know her. I think Larry mentioned they got to know her better than they did the mother that raised him, Mrs. Ham.
Right.
So. Um, that was, it was just beautiful. It was a beautiful ceremony. It was a Catholic ceremony. It was at
Uh-huh.
St. Joseph's Church, and then, well, it was at the funeral home initially, Thornton Funeral Home, which was only a few minutes away from the church, with St. Joseph's Catholic Church, where she was buried with her brother. Her brother is buried in the same cemetery,
Now,
and her
did
brother
it
was
have
in the Navy.
her? Did they have her whole history, like her mom and dad?
Right. So Teresa Burton, the daughter of the late Walter and Catherine Burton, and she was born on November 30th, 1935. She was born the same month as me.
Uh
She's a
huh.
Sag instead of a Scorp.
Thanksgiving
But
baby. Go ahead.
yeah,
And where was she
yeah.
born at?
She was born in Washington, D.C.
Okay, she's a DC.
Mhm.
Okay,
And
her.
so was Larry. Larry was born in Washington, D.C. So he was brought to
Okay.
Newark, right? After, I think he was about a year old when he was brought to Newark. Yeah.
And where were the parents from? Her parents. Just
And it does not say. It does not say
it,
where
it,
they were from, but Teresa was born in Washington, D.C. Yeah.
yeah, I just asked because it seems, I don't know. It seems that a lot of elder uh, African Americans that are in the Catholic Church, a lot of them were from the Caribbean, and that's what I
Mhm.
was wondering if they
Right.
were, from the
Mhm.
Caribbean because they,
Right.
yeah, just because of I guess probably because of England, how they were settled and everything,
Mhm.
y- um, were was
Mhm.
there any indication? But they didn't say that. Okay.
Excuse me. No, there was no indication really, and it's possible. Um,
Hmm.
I always suggest that people do the African ancestry or the uh, the other ancestry DNA test
Uh-huh.
and find out more information about your history background. And I've been urging Larry to do that as well. So he can get
Remember at
some
the
more
pop
information.
meetings, right around Thanksgiving, he would give us that speech. When you at the Thanksgiving, put those phones down, interview the eldest person in the room, and see what's going on.
And
Because when they leave, all that history leaves with them. How
it's
important
so
that
true.
is. Yeah.
And I think about how much would have been lost had he not gotten to know his mother.
Right.
Um, there's so much, and it's sad because there was a lot lost anyway. Like he never got to know or meet Teresa's brother. And
So his uncle.
again, with when
Uh-huh.
people die, they take information with them. They take,
Oh,
you know, so it's sad because there's a lot she didn't remember, and I think she found it somewhat frustrating, when
yeah.
talking to her. But she tried. She really tried to get as much or remember as much as she could for the
Yeah.
book. But there were some things she did not know, and it was a little frustrating for her. I think a little frustrating for Larry. That's why it's so important to tell those stories.
And I know
And
she,
have
as
them brought
Grandma
up.
Teresa, must be very proud, and she's a great grandmother
She
as
was.
well, right? She,
Yeah, yeah.
she,
She has one great grandson,
right.
and and she got to meet that grandson, so that was a beautiful thing. But you could see how deeply touched those grandchildren were by her
Uh
life. They were deeply touched. I think Nia was the first one there
huh.
after she died. She tried to get there before she passed, but she didn't quite make it. And
Okay.
but she tried her best.
Right.
And but you could see how deeply touched all of them were by Grandma Burton.
Yeah, and Annette,
It's
you're writing, Miss Alston, you're writing a book on the story of Larry Hamm's in the life. I didn't even know that.
Was actually written already,
Wow,
and
that's
it's been in the works for some years, actually since 2017.
awesome.
It's being published by Africa World Press, and and so I just got the second galley back on Friday.
Awesome.
And Todd Burrows, I have to give a shout out to him. Todd
Mhm.
Stephen Burrows, he's edited the hell out of it. Excuse my
Wow.
language.
that,
He
that
really,
means a lot of reading.
yeah, he determined it's going to be as perfect as it can be. And so once we got the second galley back, Todd went through that entire thing with, a fine tooth comb that
Uh-huh.
same day, went through the whole thing. And there were a few things that we still need to clean up. So
Mhm.
it may be maybe a little bit longer, but we're going to get it done. I'm going
Yeah.
through everything piece by piece and making those corrections. And I told Larry, I said, okay, we're gonna have this out before your birthday. I know this, I
Oh,
know
just
that, I
before
know
we got
that.
until Christmas now, right? Christmas.
But
What made
hopefully
you
long before
decide?
that.
Because I'm just learning about this book, and now I'm
Okay.
fascinated about it because I didn't know that there was going to be a book about the life of Harry Lamb. So of Larry
Yeah.
Hamm. What made you decide to write a book about his life in 2017? Like, how did this idea come about?
So conversations, seeing how Larry would be booked up
Yeah.
every single for Black History Month, Dr. King's birthday, speaking engagements back and forth. And he would tell often stories and snippets and things like that. And I said, it would be really good if you had all of this in the book,
Yeah.
and not only that, but you could document everything that happened with you. And Todd, again, was part of that process and talking to him because he's a historian too.
Yeah.
And so he was like, you really need to do this. It really needs to be done. So
Absolutely.
I give him acknowledgments in the beginning of the book because I'm like, this probably would not have happened um, if it had not been for him.
Well, Mr. Hamm
And
is so
but
extraordinary. So I know, I mean, I'm excited
Right.
because his life has been extraordinary for sure.
So Kaleena,
it has,
let's see what
it
we can
has.
pick out from her. Let's see what we can pick out. Can we get the name of the book?
Yeah.
It's it's Life in the Struggle.
Mm.
Oh,
Lawrence Ham, the story of Lawrence Ham, Life in the
Oh, yes.
Struggle. And yeah. So it
Life in
was
the
as told
Struggle.
to
It's so
Annette
are there
Alston.
like chapter ones too? Does it read in chapters?
Yeah. Yeah. It goes from the time when uh from his childhood, and there's a little prologue in the beginning which kind
Mm.
of
Mm-hmm.
start with the his board of education uh appointment, and
Okay.
some of the stuff that happened with that, especially with the liberation flag being right. There was a whole lot of controversy
Mm-hmm.
once the board voted to have the liberation flag in the classrooms.
Uh-huh.
That controversy spread from New Jersey to Tanzania.
Mm.
Yeah, I
And I'm
think
not
it's
exaggerating,
we can
right?
Google and we can
It
find the
blew up,
article in the New York Times. I think it was a New York Times article or something he said.
hmm
It was actually an
hmm
article about it,
Yeah,
right?
there was it was in the New York Times. He was in there a couple of times.
Mhm.
So yeah, at 17 years old, he took the world on,
Yeah.
and and the story, goes back to his beginnings and how he,
Uh-huh.
grew up, and how he was not he was kind of grew up in a kind of apolitical situation.
Mhm.
None of his family was really much into politics.
Wow.
um but and you know what the interesting thing is, though, just a sidestep, Teresa Burton, however, even though they had not crossed paths for
Mm.
quite a few years, when Larry went to Teresa's house and met her, he saw these plaques all over, and things that she had received for
Wow.
the work that she had done, community work that she had done,
Mm.
um, and volunteerism and community work. And so it was in the DNA.
Wow.
you
Isn't that
know,
something?
yeah, it was in the
Wow.
DNA.
Mm.
So
That's phenomenal. We raised
yeah.
up Miss Burton and we thank her for bringing such a treasure into this
Right.
world, and to the mom who raised him for
Mama Ham.
him for nurturing such a treasure. I'm not surprised that he would have an extraordinary story because he's such an extraordinary human being. And
Mhm.
Oh,
God bless his heart that his both of his mothers have passed on, but
Right.
they have left quite a legacy. So we're grateful to them and we honor them.
Right. And his mother's name was Grace. I knew it was
Grace,
Grace
Grace.
Grace
Grace.
Ham.
It just, I'm getting old. I don't know.
You
but
got a lot of
it's
information
so
in there that you're
powerful.
working on.
Yeah.
So Grace
Grace Ham,
Ham and you said
Larry, his
Dolores
his
Burton?
mhm. the Teresa Burton,
Teresa Burton.
Teresa Ann
Okay.
Burton. Hmm
Okay. Teresa Ann. Okay.
Right. But these, last 25 years, he said he wished he had had a longer time with her.
Wow.
But
Um,
God gave them time to know one another,
Mhm.
and I think fill a gap in a hole in her life, because
Mhm.
keep in mind she had been looking for him for 40 years.
Wow. What
Yeah.
that's amazing. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that, it's a blessing that they were able to reconnect and have a beautiful relationship, and
mhm.
in time did not get in the way of that, because sometimes it does, for whatever
Right.
reasons people are not able to get over, what caused them to be apart in the first place. But I'm so
hmm
glad their hearts were open and that they had 25
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
together. That's beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me on. I
Yeah.
appreciate it, and rock
Okay.
this. I love seeing
Well, okay. What?
my
And one more question
sisters
about the book. What and
running
now is it
things.
name? Is it like is chapter one called the Liberation Flag? I don't know. What's chapter
Well,
like? Do you
no,
name
no.
the
Okay.
chapters?
So I have no, seriously. I don't have all the chapter names memorized. It's quite a few.
But you do name the chapters.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Every chapter is named. You have the prologue, which is
Uh,
the it's called Angry, something angry, because that was that's how he was
Percent.
penned in the New York Times, as
Mhm.
an angry black man. So
Mhm.
it's
mhm.
Lawrence Ham. Angry. The the other one is Up South. The next
Okay.
chapter, when you talk about his childhood, and the connections to South 17th Street, and, well, even before South 17th Street, Ridgewood Street, which is where he initially was brought to from Washington, D.C.,
Mm.
which
Okay.
was what he called a coal flat place. It was just you had cold water.
Cool.
It was very basic there, and so that's actually the last address that Teresa Burton. But
Ooh.
once the Larry Hamm, the father, passed away, Larry was only like 3 or 4 years old. The mother moved in with her parents,
Okay.
and so it was with her family, and so they by the time Teresa got there to that particular address, they were no longer there. And she had gone there with her brother at that time. I think this might have been in the 1970s or something. And but by the time they got there, they were gone. And so, and it might have been earlier than that, really, actually. And so she had no idea how to find them, and it was a long process. She in searching for her son, and she showed up at the nursing home. She found her at Grace Hamm at the nursing home, and the rest,
The rest is
goes from
history.
there.
So when you get ready to do the movie, who do you picture playing Larry? Who do you picture being Larry Hamm? What actor? When this is
Now
come on
you even
TV One.
thought about that. Wow, that's something to think about. I don't know.
You
I
don't
don't
know
know. I don't.
who.
I think it's probably some young actor that
That's
doesn't
right.
Who's the young man
play.
from Newark? Michael Jordan.
That'd be something,
Yeah,
right? That'd be
yeah,
something.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And he's from Newark too.
Right. Exactly.
That's right. Well,
Yeah.
you're looking beautiful, Miss Alston. It
Oh,
was so
Thank
gorgeous.
you.
It's good to
Thank you.
see
And
you.
I'm engaged now.
Woo!
Yay.
congratulations!
Congratulations. Are you still
So
you're not in New Jersey anymore, right?
no, no, no. I'm in Georgia.
Yes.
Georgia.
So God
Yeah.
bless and
They're trying to
enjoy.
make a peach out of me.
A Georgia peach. So DJ Rhino said Denzel's son could be play Larry.
you know,
That's something.
it's possible. It's possible. Now, they'd have to have a couple of actors playing him though, because they'd have to get him from a kid, and
So
yeah, they'd have to follow that. So they have to have a couple of actors for him. But I think that it would probably be someone that's unknown that, becomes a star through this process.
That's right. We got to find a perfect person. Yes.
Yeah.
okay, DJ Rhino said what?
Thank you.
Congrats!
Yeah.
Might have took her off the market. I don't know. I don't know if you know when they interviewed Annette and Jonathan's parents one Valentine's Day during the courtship, but they
Mhm.
weren't engaged. And Annette's mother told Annette's father, "If you see me walking down the street with another man, don't get upset or act like or acknowledge me because you haven't spoken, you haven't, I guess." Stepped up and
That's right.
asked for me to be your woman and
Yeah.
everything. Just keep. Yeah, I said this
Mom
woman.
had
Whew.
mom had a few brothers. She had four brothers, and she watched them. And she said, "I'm not going to be the one sitting by the phone waiting for you to call me. I will be dating. You can date, until I have the ring on my finger. I don't even want to hear about it."
That's right.
I love that.
I like that.
Mhm.
Well, we know you have to go, but we thank you for being with us.
Mhm. Thank you.
All right, have a good one and
Yes.
see
Thank
you when
you.
for the book signing soon.
Yes,
Yes, you
I got my
will.
credit
Yes, you
card
will.
ready. We're going to buy
Oh,
those book things.
That's it.
that's right.
That's it. Looking forward to seeing you all.
All right, have a
No,
good one.
I look forward to coming back to New Jersey. Really, I miss Jersey. I do.
We miss you
Georgia's
too.
cool. I love the weather, but I miss
Uh,
Jersey.
Yeah, we miss you too, Miss Alston. Good to see
Have
you.
a blessed one.
have a blessed one.
That is so wonderful, Donna. I had
All right.
no idea that there was a book coming on Mr. Hamm. Mr. Hamm, I call him all the time to inspire my students. High
Mm-hmm.
school, college. If you need the job done where you need young people to be energized, educated, inspired, given some history, And because he was a youth leader, he was a young person.
Exactly. Till this day, the youngest person to have served on the Board of Education.
Yeah, so he is, a lot of times, young people hear from speakers who are older or, don't necessarily have their story, but he was doing this work in his teens. And so, I love to have him come to talk to young people. So we send you much love, Mr. Hamm. Thank you for all that you do. And we look forward to you getting back in Newark and stirring things up.
And it's like God brought him to this earth for such a time, because how things were orchestrated, and till this day, being a young man, going to Princeton, he did some dynamic things down there. And to this day, he's a very disciplined person, and you have to be to do the work, and for people to it's time. The work is tiring, especially when you have a heart for the people. You're not just doing it because you're doing it because it's a calling on you. So that's a very challenging thing. But he's always arises to the position, and I'm grateful for that.
Those runs every birthday, for my such and such birthday, I ran such and such miles. I'm like, I don't know how you do it, but that is but it's inspiring, you got to keep your health up too. And he's out here just doing his thing. So it's wonderful. Hello, Mr. Barbie is here, Donna.
We brought you on. We knew you. He's like, I wasn't ready.
Hello.
We are ready for you, Mr. Barbie.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How's everyone?
Great. So did you happen to hear the last segment?
No. I was in the car.
Oh, you were in the car. Okay. Well, to catch you up, Annette got engaged. Chairman Hamm had his mom pass, and they had her funeral today. And she told us a little bit about that. But did you know that Larry was adopted?
No, I didn't. I've known a lot about Larry. He's an RTI alum as myself. He used
Me too.
to hang on High Street. Oh, get out. RTI?
Yeah. RTI, yep, RTI. Mm-hmm.
Oh, what year? What year were you?
2000.
Oh, okay. So you're recent.
Yeah, class of 2000.
That's not recent.
That's 21 years
I was like, that's recent.
It's all relative. You're more recent than he is. That's what he's saying.
Yeah, class of 2000.
Yeah, Larry was 74.
Okay.
And you were?
Yeah, Larry was 74. I was 84.
Okay, 10 years later.
Kaleena, is that the pronunciation?
Yes.
Okay, so you were 2000. Hey, listen, on my site, you're not my friend on social media. However, we have these T-shirts that we're selling. They're like all class T-shirts. It doesn't designate your year. But we're doing that. So
I'll spread the word. I was class president of class of 2000. So I will spread the word to the 2000 to buy those T-shirts.
Do you guys have a Facebook page?
We do. We have a group.
Do you have a Facebook page?
We have a Facebook group for the RTI class of 2000.
And what is it called?
Second millennium first class. Yeah, that's what it's called.
What?
Second millennium first class. That was our theme.
Name of the page.
Our theme, okay, it was 2000, and our theme was second millennium first class. Okay, so so that's the name of the page.
That's why no one can find you.
I'll find
now,
you.
Second is written out the word. All right, yeah, just hit William Michael Barbie. Okay, let me delete somebody right now.
And I'll send it. I'll send it over to you. But yeah, we'll spread the word about those shirts.
All right, I just deleted a person, so I got room to put one more person up there. So send it.
Okay.
All right.
The RTI family, your RTI family is a very close knit family. What is the first graduating class of RTI?
Oh Oh, that's a good
Not too
question.
short.
Okay.
I don't know, but it's still going strong. And Principal Denos has fantastic program brewing there. And I think a lot of us alumni need to definitely find a way to come back and pour into the young people and let them know that we're doing all kinds of great things and different things. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we gotta give some love to those kids.
Yeah. Arts
Yeah, that's
High.
an overall cry because it takes a community, and we are that
Mm-hmm.
community. And Donna, one of the things with Arts High, what makes Arts High such a special school, we were coming around from the city of Newark, from all aspects of Newark, and we were coming to the Central Ward.
Okay.
Back in the 80s, we had to fight. Central used to fight us all day, every day. And so we're coming
in
in.
the 2000s too. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we
So Benedict and Arts High used to have to team up because of the skirmishes that occurred. And so we came together because we all were either artists, painters, as I am, singers, dancers, actors.
Okay.
And so through our talents, we came together. And then back then we had to have the academics as well.
That's right.
So is Michael Jordan from Arts High?
Yeah, he was Arts High. He was
He's
after
Arts
you.
High.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was after me, like maybe 04 or something like that.
Okay. So that's lot very, very close family. When people you see Arts High, y'all start talking, and conversation just goes a whole different way.
Listen, when I was
As
there,
it
we
did
didn't
today.
have a gym. Did you
Y'all-
have a gym when you were there?
Yeah, we had a gym.
See, we didn't have a gym.
Yeah, so we
We didn't have that.
the new. I think when we started, the second side, which is the new side, was just being built. So there's the old half of Arts High, and then adjacent to it is the new half, and that's where the gym is, and like the TV studio, school office, all of that stuff. So that's where the fan in the auditorium and the older classes are on the other side.
What do you have because you got Wiggums, Arts High, the street, and then St. Benedict's. Where do you build in the back?
Like, no, it's adjacent. Arts High, like the old Arts High is at the corner, and then the new Arts High is right next to it.
It's between Wiggums and on the side of Wiggums.
Yeah. On the side of Wiggums. Okay.
That's where the new entrance is.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. Also, I thought you was going to say what was interesting is that you're so close to St. James AME. You're close to my home church.
The pastor voted for me last year. He voted for me in the election.
Pastor Slaughter? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're here to talk to you in the space of you recently wrote another book, but also about mental health. Kaleena's in the education field, and I remember the last panel that when you did the panel, and one of I think it was a Dr. Brown on the panel, Kaleena, and one of the things that Dr. Brown said, we have not begun to see how COVID has affected our communities from a mental health standpoint, and we have to prepare. And I remember her saying that on the panel.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and Mike has been here several times, is that one of the I called a couple of weeks ago was because of the shooting. I believe it was Texas, and it was so interesting when one of the reasons that just reading different things that the young man had said that just being young and just being frustrated and not being able to achieve relationships with girls, being young and not being able to have a girlfriend and things like that. That was frustrating for him. And I just thought about from a mental health, and we, you used to always hear at one point how different women, girls and boys mature. And so now we're at a point we got all of these different things going on in our community, and it seems like the go-to is a gun. And how do we stop, pause, and and get some more answers and help our babies. And then it's just at the mall. When I seen the picture at the mall like 2 weeks ago, people were just walking, and then all of a sudden you just seen everybody running, and you had probably in the last couple of weeks. At one point this year, we had more shooting than we had days, and I don't know if it's still like that, but it was just very concerning about the continuing numbers of mass shootings that we're having.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's been one. Thanks for having me. And by no means am I an expert on mass shootings. So let me just put that out there. But I think what we're seeing is a breakdown of so many elements. And COVID just happens to be the last ingredient in that perfect storm of destruction. When we
Yeah.
look historically at the breakdown of the family, breakdown of community, and particularly in the African American community, the breakdown of the father taken out of the family in the 60s, 70s, and the targets through systemic and other focuses on the Black family back then. We have a breakdown. And so years later, as the doctor you had on the show that you were just referencing, saying that we haven't seen all that COVID has done, or at least the results of COVID, we're just seeing the results of what it looked like when the fathers were taking out of the house back in the 60s and 70s. And so breakdown of family, community. I remember growing up, we didn't have these videos. And I was just talking to some kids today, and I was telling them about, you guys don't know about a floppy disk and a drive A and a drive B. You had all of the stuff that you had to. You don't know about an encyclopedia and actually going to the dictionary.
Yeah.
And so you don't know your neighbors either. And when we have a breakdown in family, community, the interpersonal responsibility and skills that children normally would have developed are no longer there. And so what they do, they get it off of social media, they get it off video games, artificial intelligence. You get all of these fast-paced microwave drive-through theories, and this is how our children are learning. And unfortunately, we're dropping the ball in the generation before us. And so at this stage of our lives, we all must rise to the occasion and take our parts in looking at solutions. And even in addition to solutions, we need commitment.
Yeah.
Because everyone believes that, oh, I can't do this. And I say from everyone's platform, we have a responsibility to one another. We have to be our brothers and sisters keepers. And so when we see all these shootings and we look at the breakdown of family, we look at the interpersonal skills, what happened in childhood. And that's why it's so important now that we rescue our children, because many are growing up in the dysfunction that we're witnessing.
Mm-hmm.
We've never seen in these large numbers where parents are afraid to speak to their children. Parents don't know where their children are. And when we have children who don't have interpersonal skills and they have generations of stuff, not to even speak about other generations. I remember I wrote my last book, which was Hear My Voice, Born Black in America. It was written in the heat of COVID. And I was trying to understand why we as people of color were dying at such ton of and Trump. I wanted to I had to do the research. Racism, structural and institutional racism, and that negatively impacted us. And so looking at the problems we're seeing today in our community, as well as abroad, we have to really start dissecting this stuff, and it takes everyone's hands to be a part of the solution.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was meeting with student leaders of mine yesterday, and they were talking about Chat GPT, and that they're using Chat GPT to help them write papers. And I was just, you were talking about like the encyclopedia. Just if we think about how we grew up in the simplicity of it, um, you walked around. If you wanted to see your friends, you walked around the corner and you visited their home. And if you wanted to chat, you might have had a beeper if you were savvy, or if your parents were able to give you one. But for the most part, you had to talk on the phone. And in order to talk to your friends, most of the time you had to speak to their parent before they would hand the phone to your friends.
Sure.
And, it was just a different time. We had to look up things. We had to go to the library. Like, you had to go to a library in order to do your work. But, I think it was just our parents had to be more involved in our day-to-day lives. They saw our friends. And now kids are, they find out one student left their AirPod, and they were able to see whose AirPod it was by connecting it to their phone. And, it's just so different. And I think what happened during the pandemic was that a lot of young people were forced to disconnect from school, from one another, from their social activities. And a lot of them witnessed death and sadness. And then we wanted them to now reconnect again and build bonds again and be in person again. And it was just too much because they had gotten used to the solitude that the pandemic created. And so what we saw in schools was when we started to go back into them and we tried to engage young people, they were like, just kind of, out of it a bit. And it was our fault. Traumatized. And we dropped the ball because we should have, if we could shut down the world for COVID, then we should have been able to shut down a certain part of life in order to make sure that our kids were okay and that we were okay. But we did it. We went from one extreme to the next. And so young people, they were kind of disconnected. They were tired. They were overwhelmed. They were depressed. And when I gather with young people now, like our youth advisory board was meeting, they're so joyful when they're doing something meaningful, when they're in their programs, when they're developing their confidence and their skills, when we're feeding them and loving on them. Our roles as educators and program leaders and mentors and et cetera are so important to them feeling themselves again and healing and getting back to themselves. And so, we've seen in our program that we had to revamp how we approach young people. We had to make our programming more energetic, more engaging, more social, so that they could get used to talking to each other face to face again. And once we did that, they started to come out of their shell. But it was very difficult. And that's just for myself as a program provider. I can't imagine what educators have gone through. And, even educators, we didn't pause for them either. We just, okay, we traumatized you with online learning, and now we're going to throw you right back into the classroom and pick up where you left off. And they're like, we're all traumatized. We're all confused.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. Thank you for sharing that. COVID hit us like none other. We haven't experienced anything like that in our generation. And when you said, yes, we're all traumatized, that is exactly what has happened. And so with the complete breakdown in every aspect of our structure and our stable lives, we witness government breaking down. We watch the results of it today with the issue of Trump's crap when he was in office. Mm-hmm. We've seen the Democrats, Republicans, Independents going astray. But when we look at the pressures brought on by COVID and the impact that it's had, and you were speaking from the classroom, but it just broke down everything we do once we thought we had. And so from that lens, recently ran on the zoning board at West. I ran for office and as a councilman last year. And one of my points of reference that I was really advocating for was mental health counseling as a mandatory thing in high schools. And just as with
Yeah.
counseling comes, or and like when we were in school, we had a class called health and human development. And I'm thinking, based on what we've experienced and what you're seeing as a program director in schools, that we need to have initiatives that address the mental wellness of students every day. And I believe there has to be a class period called group or something to that effect. And the importance of something like a group, the students will shape the direction of the class under the facilitation of a professional. I think the school should have counselors, mandatory credentialed LPCs on staff as well. And I think that class would afford students the opportunity to learn how to vent and put words to those emotions. And often we don't give that verbiage to how we feel, and they tend to internalize it.
Yeah.
Because then we have to look at their families of origin, where they come from, how they dealt with stress, how they dealt with trauma. And if truth be told, we're all dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder in some aspect or another. And so I've always advocated for that, particularly in schools, and I just really push for it. And I really want to see it come into fruition, where it's mandatory, not just in state of New Jersey, but around this country.
Yeah. And we have ESSER funds. You know, I wonder how, if we all know that this is something that's needed, if the kids are saying, because the students have been saying it, they're saying we need more mental health opportunities, we need support. If everyone's saying that this is something that is needed, how come it's not being implemented fully in schools? And we do have the funding. Districts are sending back hundreds of thousands of dollars at the end of the school year of unspent funds. And so I don't know how we lift this up higher so that it becomes something that people can't ignore, the need for this. But with the Education Law Center, we had a task force for about half of the year. We were looking at how North Public Schools was handling student mental health. They have a lot of vendors and a lot of programs and different approaches to supporting young people. But what we found was that most of it was directed to young people who had like observable challenges. And so there was a stream of support for them. But the student that's kind of right under the radar, sitting quietly, not saying what's on their mind, maybe that C student that's struggling, but isn't a behavioral issue, their needs weren't being addressed.
So, and
Yeah,
Mr. Barber,
yes.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Respond.
No, good. Were you? No, I
want to
echo what you're saying, but a lot of times when funding is returned, it's because funds are restricted to specific. And so, funds have to be unrestricted in some areas when they're getting grant money and different funding sources. Yeah, I echo what you just said. I think we're in perilous times, man, and we have to find ways. I like what Joe D is doing with the county school system, or at least whoever the officials are over the county school system, with the social emotional learning, and they're even involving teachers in the process of a therapeutic model for the students as well, because they recognize that teachers are overwhelmed or overloaded as well. And I look at also, I'm on the board of directors I'm the board secretary for the Mental Health Association. And I've watched the way that we are the pilot program with the West Orange Police Department, because we watch the interactions of law enforcement, particularly the mental health community. And we saw where we can help with education and providing resources to those law enforcement officers so they know how to engage the community. I think that same structure or a similar idea needs to be implemented in the school system. And it's not okay to just hire people who have passive degrees in the area of counseling, but hire licensed professional counselors as part of your team, people who are trained specifically to do these tasks, to deal with these different traumatic situations, debriefing, and being able to target whatever the issue is. Because a lot of times people say everything is mental. Oh, he must be crazy or she must be crazy. But that's not the case. Often people don't know how to respond to the behaviors that they're experiencing and how to put words to those behaviors. And so they label them something this, something that. But I think with true education, with true resources, and with the proper people, another issue that tends to happen is that we put things, we have politicians who are not as versed to the issues, and they only can learn what we teach them because they're there to do a specific role and to represent their constituents. But we can't believe that they know every issue that impacts us or that they're experts. And so that's why it's important that we reach out to our local legislators and demand their attention, demand some type of interaction, communication with them so that they can be well versed. Every year, the Mental Health Association and Mental Health America, and there's another organization, we have these big campaigns where we go to Washington and we learn about policies, but we also educate the legislators, the senators, and the Congress people about issues impacting our community. Like I'm going this month down to DC for 3 days, and it's a big lobbying and educational drive. And so they need our support in the local area, like this program, All Politics Are Local. It is so true that we have to target it on the local basis and not just expect, everything to come down the federal funding chain. But we really have to target it on the local basis.
You spoke about earlier one of your older books, but we want to also talk about your most current release and what inspired that book. And can you tell us what inspired it and a little bit about the book?
Well, thank you. My latest book is Hear My Voice, Born Black in America. It's 71,000 words. I, like everyone else, was impacted by COVID. Not only was I impacted, I caught COVID. Prior to catching it, I experienced anxiety by losing so many loved ones and friends over that 2.5, 3 year period until I started experiencing anxieties. And now I've always been able to talk about what anxieties are, the side effects to this, to that, blah, blah, blah. Depression, all these things I've been able to talk about. But when it hits home and you're so accustomed to putting your resources out to the community, to certain focus groups, speaking on panels about the stuff, it's a different effect when it hits you directly. And so I started drinking coffee constantly, and I didn't realize I wasn't eating. In the back of my mind, I'm worrying about the next death. Almost got jaded to the fact that death was coming so often. It was just about me processing, saying who's next. And so in the midst of COVID, I wrote the $71,000 word book, Hear My Voice, Born Black in America, because I needed to bring some understanding to why we as people of color were dying at disproportionate rates. And as I mentioned earlier, this book was birthed out of the pain. I was on your show last time, Councilwoman, with Brother Ed, and we were talking about being intentional about bringing together our resources and doing something positive. And interestingly enough, while going through COVID, I said, I need to do something. So on top of all these companies I run, all these boards of organizations I'm on, I decided to go to graduate school to understand from a clinical perspective why we feel the way we feel, we experiencing what we're feeling. And so just 3 weeks ago, I did my master's in clinical counseling so that I can now start providing the services to the very people who look like you and I. And so me writing this book and breaking down why we're so traumatized, why we're experiencing things at disproportionate rates, there was a historic correlation to trauma and talking about high blood pressure and how we associate, or we tend not to associate those two. And so when we're looking at high blood pressure, which run rapid in our community, we realize it's part of that where it comes from. And so when we say it's part of stress, now link it to some unaddressed traumas. And the first thing that came to my mind while writing slavery, the most traumatic thing that was never addressed. We look at institutionalized that impacted us negative ways. Those things continue to against. So writing this book was bringing the correlation to whether it was systemic factors, structural factors, whether it was in law enforcement, whether it was in the Constitution, whether it was in every aspect of government, the structure, the system. When we look at every aspect going to mass incarceration and understand the prisoner leasing program back in the 1800s, where wealthy croppers or slave owners would pay money to the government to get free labor. And so incarcerating Black people became a money-making proposition years ago, many years ago. And so it's no accident that we see inside of our communities, jails are being built to house us. Legislation is disproportionately being made to impact us. So writing this book was given a face and given some verbiage to why we suffer in the aspects in which we do. I even talked from the art perspective, me being a filmmaker, and I talked about the minstrel shows and the Black faces. And then I guess it was back in the 80s, in the 90s, Whoopi Goldberg put whiteface on, and that was just as bad as blackface. And so there's so many factors that we see. And so when we look at what's happening today, Dr. DeLacy Davis speak to the police issue, and he's one of the people in my documentary, Hear My Voice, Born Black in America, that brings in that correlation from his experience, knowledge, and talking about the disproportionate rate in which we're impacted. But we also have to look at legislation. We have to look at other factors that have impacted us. And so that's what this book was, really just a deep dive. We never thought about it, but when you go in the supermarket, years ago when we were children, all Band-Aids were pink. Now I'm dark skinned, and I used to love to have that pink Band-Aid on me. And back in the 80s, they started making the darker or more invisible Band-Aid. And I never realized that the Band-Aids were made to hide the scar of people who were white. That's why they were that pink color. And then when the dark ones or the clear ones came out, in my little ignorant mind, because of the conditioning, I didn't think they were as good as the pink ones. And so I was already conditioned as so many others. And so I still at that time continued to buy the pink ones. But I say that to say there's so much ingrained in the way we see ourselves. Dr. Joy DeGruy talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome and the impact that all of this stuff has had on us. And so writing this book and bringing all of these stories current to show the correlation and why we exist the way we do is important in understanding how and why COVID impacted us in negative ways. And until we start looking at it from a systemic, structural, political, cultural perspective, we're going to continue to see the worst of the worst as a result of this particular thing.
And where can people buy the book?
The book can be bought Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can go on the website of bornblackinamerica.com. You can order it.
Awesome.
You can order it Amazon.
Have you had a book signing?
I've had many book signings for my other books, but this one I didn't because it was in the midst of COVID.
Okay.
And after going through that trauma that I experienced as a result of having COVID and seeing so many people die, which inspired me to write this book, I was too afraid to have too many people in my face. Because when I have a book signing, I have hundreds of people to come out and I market this thing very well. But I was just so afraid to have a book signing. So we did everything else. So I created a documentary series on Hear My Voice, Born Black in America, where we have medical doctors speaking to the impact and effects that slavery's had. And we've shown it at different high schools in the city of Newark, different platforms. I've even spoken for Bristol Myers. I've spoken for, I think, Novartis. But I've spoken on different platforms to speak to issues that have impacted us in negative ways.
Excellent. Excellent.
And so, what's next? What do you see yourself doing? You know, the book is out. You're running for council. You the outcome was not in your favor, and you know what's next for Mike Barbie? Are
Well,
you going to
as you know,
stay? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
as you've known me all of these years, all of your life, my life, Mike Barbie has been one who's been driven by God. And the businesses that I've been able to build to create the life that I have, I am truly blessed, humbled, and honored. Bringing that intellect, wealth of experience from the business aspect of running 8 companies and hiring over the past 30 years over 1,000 folks, and being a positive impact in the community of Essex County, I thought it would benefit the residents of West Orange. And so, yes, I ran, but even running up there, it was beneficial to be placed in such a tight race when I was a no name in the area, even though I've lived there for 23 years. What they didn't know, because I'm philanthropic in the organization, the boards that I'm a part, they didn't know that Mike Barbie is the board secretary for the Mental Health Association, who happens to be the organization that's partnered with West Orange Police. They didn't know that Mike Barbie is the name behind all of that. They didn't know Mike Barbie is a founding member of Healthcare Foundation of the Oranges, which is the former owners of the East Orange General Hospital, where I was on the board for years, and now been for the last 7-8 years with the Healthcare Foundation. Know that when we have the fairs up there, Healthcare Foundation of the Oranges is sponsoring that, and that's because Mike Barbie is sending it there. And so when you're philanthropic in the way that I've been, you don't put your name before the mission. The mission is always first. But now everyone knows me, so they say, hey, go to the zoning board. So I'm on the zoning board, making a huge and positive impact. And so what's next is to continue to do the work for the people, continue to leave more than I take, which is mantra. Just recently, as 1 o'clock, I had a meeting because I'm taking, I still have a couple of companies. I still have my mental health clinic that I've had for the last 15 years, Airmate Counseling Services, but I'm going into another direction with some other entities to do more macro on a larger level. And so that's where we're moving next. And then I got my real estate, so I have I've expanded my resources in teaching Atlanta, bought some nice pieces down there, and so God is really doing some wonderful things in my life. I'm about to down in Arizona, and I'm going to put in one of the Virginia spaces for the USA because it's the headquarters and the home that's needed to call home.
And one of the things you did coming out of art, and also
That's what
being a person that was impacted with mental health yourself, and how you turned that around and used it, took what was challenging and used it for good, and you had a movie come out of that. I thought that was brilliant and beautiful, because I believe everybody doesn't learn in the same way, and I'm often concerned when for instance, that the first thing they do is that if a child is very anxious in the class, and that they label him bad, or that they need medication, or so on and so forth. But they don't think, that this child just may be brilliant and he needs to be taught differently. So I'm just, was so fascinated with your book that, developed into a movie. And I know that was many moons what it seems ago, but can you just tell us a little bit? And do you still show the movie?
Yeah, we still show the movie. That movie, Beyond the Silence, was based on this book. This is my first book called Clip Wings They Do Fly. And Beyond the Silence was birthed out of that. And it was semi-autobiographical story about a guy who finds himself on trial for a crime he didn't remember committing. And so we've had J.D. Williams, Uzman Sharif, Bill Duke, Bill Cox, Frankie Faison, Loretta Holloway, Chico DeBarge, Jen Burgum, and others inside of that film project. Rodney Gilbert was assistant director, as well as Catherine Devereaux. So we had a huge team. So yeah, speaking to mental health and be intentional. When you were asking me earlier, what's on the horizon? I mean, we have some movie projects on the horizon, but it's more faith-based movies. And so being intentional. So yes, the movie does show. I was thinking for the month of Minority Mental Health Month, which is coming up, to show the movie for free on social media because I have access to that. And so it's a great movie, and it was at the forefront of many of these conversations before most people started looking at getting on top of this mental health as a fad. It was something that I was doing because I was once a consumer of mental health services. I opened up a clinic 15 years ago, been on the board of directors for the Mental Health Association, and now a clinician. So I'm full circle from consumer, executive, advocate, and now clinician. So I've seen the gamut, and so I've seen what's wrong as well as what's wrong with the system. So movies are ways of getting people to relax, but yet to give a positive message so that people can be impacted in a way where they're open to the dialogue, open to the conversation. And yes, that was 10 years ago. And that movie did make it over to the Cannes Film Festival and the marketplace. And so I was in France in 2019. So that's when we were there with the movie.
So as we begin to transition, we have Professor Carter with us, and we're going to be talking a little bit civics. But we have to ask the question because this is a hip hop show, political show, and we always like to ask our guests what music, hip hop in particular, are you listening to, individual or group, when you're out doing the work that inspires you? So is there a hip hop artist, individual group that you tend to turn to just to inspire you?
Well, I have to say, last time I was here, I put Brother Ed and Brother Zaire. I put them on Zaire, yeah, and I've known him forever. I put them down on this artist, Lewis Sky, Lewis, Sky, Sky. But there's another young man, Peter Collins. I want to put him down on with Peter Collins. I'm about these young artists coming out and making their mark in the community, and us supporting them most definitely because they do need our support. So Peter Collins is the new one that I'm following as well.
Well, okay. Well, thank you. And before you leave, is there any last words? I know you told us last time to be intentional, and I know I took that to one of my meetings. Like, don't ask somebody how they're doing if you don't want to know how they're doing. Be intentional. Or if you ask somebody how they're doing, take a second and listen, because it can make all the difference in somebody's day. So, is there anything that you want to leave us with today?
Yes, intentionality is very important. And it's something that I push constantly. It's more than just you can be intentionally rude too now, as well as intentionally kind. And so being intentionally kind and considerate are things that I'm really pushing. Um, Let me say this. The last time I was here and we were speaking, the brothers were speaking about the young generation following, and them not wanting to be vulnerable and expressing. I tell you have to be vulnerable. You have to express yourself. And so what I'm doing coming up, and I'll leave with this, so I'll stop talking. I'm having a wellness check of brothers, and it's going to be called temperature check. And I'm going to have a small closed group to Black men to speak to how they feel and what's impacting them in the community. And in closing, leave more than you take. I'll leave you on that note.
Well, thank you. And we look forward to having you get Professor Carter. Have you had the opportunity to meet Mike Barbie and Mike? Have you had the opportunity to meet Professor Carter?
No, but it's a pleasure right now. How are you, ma'am?
I'm fine. And yourself? I enjoyed that part of what you said, what you talked about. I was listening to you about your book, and I just encourage people to use small and local bookstores to encourage them. Otherwise, they won't be here. So, please make sure. I know in Newark we have Source of Knowledge. There are a couple of places, and that's a Black bookstore, as you probably know. And then you have some other ones. So, we must support them if we want them to stay, because it gives us option. If Amazon decides to take all our stuff off, we're stuck.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, when we were children, that's all we had was the bookstore and library.
And the library. I'm going to talk about the library in a minute. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Cool. Well, my pleasure, and God bless you.
Take care. Back at you.
All right. It's raining. Get your umbrellas. Hey, Professor. How are you?
I'm okay. I got a lot on my plate. So but I do, because you call me and you're such a special person. Oh, Kaleena. She's such a
you got your we can't hear you, Kaleena.
I'm sorry. The show because I am working still on Friday night, so I'm sorry.
When I get finished,
camera, we're like trying to get ready for a graduation, and they're sending proofs and things. But it's so good to see you, Miss Carter.
I understand. I got a client. I got some client stuff. I'm on 5 committees with the bar. As a matter of fact, I'm on the New Jersey Bar Association Committee on cannabis in particular, and we're trying to do some things to make expungement easier for people in New Jersey. We're working on trying to get it to be systemized and uniform, and to have the bar association as the umbrella. So we'll be bringing in all the stakeholders, the attorney general for the state, all the prosecutors throughout. Everybody has an interest to kind of figure out how we can make this as easy as possible for folks, because it should not be a complicated issue. And, interesting, this is not what I'm talking about. I'm going to say it anyway.
But, one way you can, maybe y'all should just mail a sample out to everybody in New Jersey and get, didn't have them of the cannabis and didn't have them fill out a form.
Well, yeah, that would be something. The other part is people have to get expungements, have dismissals. No, hear what I'm saying? It goes to the point that you have dismissals, which means, nothing ever happened, and you got to get that expunged. So you got to pay for somebody to expunge something that where the court said it's dismissed, or it was never prosecuted, and you still got to get it done. So we're looking at a couple of things. So let's move on to my favorite topic, civics.
Yeah, we're going to talk about expungements coming back, because 2 things in the court system that is very challenging: trying to change your name and an expungement. Those are two tedious things to do. But let's move on. What we're here to talk about today.
Yeah, civics. Well, I said this the last time I was on. I'm going to repeat it again. And then basically, we should think about civic toolboxes and not just voting. Voting is just one aspect of the civic empowerment toolbox, but it's the only one people talk about. And, it's unfortunate, because a lot of people who talk about voting all the time, they never even approach the information people need to know. And it's a different ballgame. Just really quickly, and I know I said this the last time I was on the program, if people have a tape, they can hear it. But I said, in the segregated South, those Black teachers were teaching young children, because the older children, they would have to, if they were sharecroppers, when they got older in the spring, they had to go and help with the farm, with the food to make sure they ate and etc. But they were teaching 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds, if they were small, teaching them civics when they couldn't even be second-class citizens.
Yeah.
Couldn't be second-class citizens. And when you think about it, these young children were really the foundation of, and I know people use civil rights. It wasn't civil rights. It was a freedom movement. Civil rights fell under the freedom movement. We get that confused. The Black Power movement, the young, all of that was part of the umbrella of the freedom movement. And so when we think about the first Black this, the first Puerto Rican that, it came out of those children. I'm not saying they had a notebook, they're like, you know, a checklist, but they still had that in them as they migrated to the North. And so that was one part. The other part is civics was a class up into the early 60s as people were migrating from the South, particularly in urban areas where Black people were. Civics was required. You could not graduate from high school unless you pass civics. Otherwise, you have to go to summer school and still pass it to get your diploma. And I will say New Jersey's Constitution is probably comparable to the United States Constitution, because when they passed the New Jersey Constitution, the legislature in 1947, you had to have civics. When you have a constituency who understands how government works, right? They know the language of government. They know the language of politics. You can get a good constitution. And so, you know, since that time, they've been taking it out. I do know that in wealthy school districts, and that should tell you something, they make sure they know civics. And I, you know, sort of suspect that that's to make sure they know how to manage in other areas, how to manage our tax money. That's my position. So, you know, that's one thing I would say. But I want to repeat this piece that I did before, that when I guest host another program out in New York, and I start with this. And so I'm going to start starting with this. Voting, as I said, is more than one of your civic responsibilities. Having a constitutional right to vote, showing up at the polls and voting, yeah, we all know that that's the case, but it's not the only thing. It serves as a significant tool in our citizen civic toolbox, but more importantly, we need to know how to manage the tools in that box to help us manage elected officials who are charged with serving the public. Remember, right, elected officials are not leaders. Leaders are those willing to die for you. The only 3 politicians, elected officials I know of in the history of my life that were willing to die for their constituent was Adam Clayton Powell, Reverend Adam Clayton Powell, who was the most effective elected official in the history of the United States, Black or white. If it wasn't for him, there would be no financial aid. He was in control of all the tax money for the state. That's for the country. That's probably why they went after him. And there's a host of other things that he's done. And he did it with the Dixiecrats that we know as Republicans now. So the other one is Shirley Chisholm and Harold Washington. So, you know, that's the problem. In terms of civics, we have to understand first and foremost the language, the terminology, the phrases, right? And understand that that's not their job. Their job is not to be leaders. Right. Their job is to find out what the consensus is of their constituency and make it happen. Yeah. Right. And I lived and I said this, the 3rd wealthiest community on the planet in the 1980s. And believe me, those elected officials jumped when those people said jump.
That's right.
And jump when they said one. So anyway, I always tell people we do a lot of waiting, right? And we do a lot of on the cell phone, you know, just messing around with the internet. But I'm going to give, you know, people some tips, and then we're going to go into questions real quick. So when you go to the voting poll, or before you get there, you need to think about, are you voting for a party or for a person? Who or what entity or organization is funding that person's election campaign? You must know, because that may be a competing interest to your interest and the interest of your community. And you can find out, you know, what their funding sources are. In New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission. And on the federal level, there's a nonprofit called opensecrets.org. So if you want to know who people are beholden to, if they're not beholden to their community, you need to find out where the money came from for their campaign. What about the candidate? Is the candidate knowledgeable about the issues? Is the candidate well-informed and able to articulate a strategy resulting in changing the conditions that the community wants changed? Seeking transformation, not reform. Reform is an illusion. That means we're going to make you think we're going to do something, but it's really illusion. It's about maintaining the status quo. So do you want transformation in your community, or do you want to see just everything the same with, like, something pretty on top? Does the person have a proven track record in social justice, if that's what is important to you, or whatever is important to you, or advocacy? Does it matter whether the person is spiritual? They don't have to be religious unless that's what you want. But, you need to find this out before you vote. Does the person have a willingness to surround themselves with competent, intelligent, principled, and committed people that represent the good you want to see in your community? Do they represent, can you hold them out as an example of a mature individual as a model for young people, right? Does the candidate have a demonstrated record of community or political courage? Those are like the 5 things. In addition, I think it's important, again, I can't stress it enough. There's the language of government and the language of politics. There are words and phrases and terms. There's not enough time for people, but if you're interested, I'll figure out a way that Donna can get my information. I can send you the terms that we should know living in the United States, whether you're a citizen or a resident. There's certain words that should be in your vocabulary, right? So you understand, one, what people are talking about, because many people, they listen to elected officials, they don't really understand what they're saying. And sometimes elected officials don't know the language themselves, right? So it's like I go into the bathroom, I'm listening to people talking, and they're both speaking, I don't know, Mandarin Chinese. I don't know what they're saying. They could be talking about me. But if you don't know the language, you don't know the phrases, the terms, the words that go with politics and go with government, you're letting somebody else make decisions for you. And we have too much power. We have too much power. And we've been demonstrating that over the history, particularly in terms of Black people in the United States. We got too much power. Adam Clayton Powell talks about what's in your hand. There's a whole lot of power we have in our hands, but we give it up to other people because we don't know what they're saying. We don't understand the system. We don't understand that our job is to make elected officials accountable, that we have a First Amendment right that not only says the press, whose job is to make sure that people are aware when the other branches of government are not acting on their behalf, but also there's a difference between media and press. Media's job is advertisement, commercials, political spin, just to name a few. The role of the press, and that's why it's in the First Amendment of the Constitution, of the 10 Amendments, the Bill of Rights. Not only do we have the press to make sure that we're knowledgeable, but also the First Amendment gives you a whole bunch of tools. You have the right to complain to government, to petition, to protest. All of that's in the First Amendment of the Constitution. And we need to know that. I tell my students, you should have, and now with the internet, you should have like an app on your phone. Ideally, I have a hard copy. An app on your phone for the Declaration of Human Rights, the Bill of Rights, and the Constitution of the United States. And particularly for Black men, I used to say, you always need to have the hard copy. When somebody stops you in your car, you can just let it fall out so they can see you know how to read, right? And a library card, because that really says you know how to read. So Adam Clayton Powell always talked about what's in your hand. If you have 25 cents and a whole bunch of people got 25 cents, and you decide I'm not giving my money to that store, all of us are not going to give our only 25%. That's power. So it don't take a lot to have power. So I talk about, one, no understanding, use the language of government, politics, and citizen law. You don't necessarily need a lawyer or a professor. Later on, I'll tell you real quickly that you can have someone from the New Jersey State Bar Association come talk at your church for free about Civics 101. Your community group, your religious organization, that's available through New Jersey State Bar Association, which is online. Use the public library. Remember, Google can take stuff off they don't want you to know about. Aside from the fact that they're collecting all your data and selling it to other people and you don't get a dime. But the public library, I can't stress, first of all, those buildings are worth $1 billion each. All the ones that were built after the Great Depression to put people back to work. And wealthy people want those buildings because they can all have the same car, same house, but they can't all have the Newark Public Library, that building. Nobody's going to build like that ever again. It's not profitable. So the other thing about the library, it's really the only place not collecting your data and giving it to somebody else. Right? And they were the librarians were the first ones after 9/11 to take on the FBI, who wanted them to give up all the information for everybody who went into the library. Like, we want to see who's in there. The librarians, right? As I said before, read and understand and apply the Declaration of Independence, U.S. Bill of Rights, which is designed to protect you from government, the Constitution of the United States, and also the Declaration of Human Rights. I said it before, get to know the history of Reverend Congressperson Adam Clayton Powell. If you want to know what you should expect in an elected official, study Adam Clayton Powell. That's what you should expect in an elected official. When you write people, write, folks don't write anymore. I know we can do the internet and that's really nice, but the most impact when an elected official sees something writing, they know that you spent some time, maybe did some research, you ain't playing. So the order in terms of relevance, significance, and importance is write first, phone calls, form letters, emails, hard petitions, and then internet petitions. That's the power. The first one is to write a letter, right? Vote in every election. Vote in every election so people could see that you vote. The most important election, I think, is the school board election, because that's the one that determines who's going to get the jobs at the school board. That's the one that determines who's going to, which authors or which books, especially now when they're banning books, right? They're banning books. We need to know as people, it doesn't matter if you have children. Now, I don't have children. I just have people like Kaleena and Donna. I don't have children. But I'm saying that you determine what books are going to be before your children in the school system. Books are really important. We know right now that a lot of the book companies are making changes to the books based on what's being banned in Texas. So all the books throughout the country are going to be influenced by that. And if you don't know the difference, you don't know what your children are getting. Local elections are, I think, most important, but the school board is more important than the presidential election, because that's going to determine how much your children are going to know about what their strength is in terms of their position in this country. And then county elections. I said this already, research the source of elected officials' funding. I cannot stress that enough, and that's really important. And I'm going to talk, if we talk a little bit about what happened with the law, it didn't pass, it's still a bill regarding the default. I call it the manufactured default. You'll see the interest and you'll know why that bill did. So Google, you can use Google, it's a tool. Google the organization's mission. Whoever's funding your elected official, what's the mission of the organization, right? Again, the funding source, and I talk about opensecrets.org. And then be prepared. And this is like old school. Be prepared to make a way out of no way. You don't need to be owned by anybody. Just be old school. Make a way out of no way. There's so many movies that you can watch. If you don't know civics, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is a class on basic civics 101. Payton Place, Imitation of Life. Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. You Can't Take It With You. Erwin Brockovich, Serpico, The Manchurian Candidate. There's Bulworth. Bulworth is an excellent movie for you to learn civics if you're not getting it in school. Your children not getting A Face in the Crowd. All the President's Men. It's a Wonderful Life. If you want to know about economics, we just had these bank failures. It's a 1933, 1934 movie. There was a crash. What did they do? They reverted to what we know as old African stuff. They had a mindset of collective, social, communal. We're going to make this happen. Everybody may not get everything they want, but we want to make sure everybody's taken care of. State of 12 Angry Men, Network, China Syndrome, whole bunch. There's also music. A couple years ago, I put together a list of music for young people so they understood history. My favorite one right now, in light of all these challenges and how they decide to spend money on war instead of poor people in their 50s with regard to this default bill, and I'll go through that really quickly, is War. What is it good for? Edwin Starr. If you want to know about war and why it's a waste of time and money, that song will just tell you by itself. Listen to the radio. I know people don't listen to the radio, but I'm telling you, because they can change things on Google. There used to be blackagenda.com. That's something I referred to. BLS is they're not doing the programs that they did before. Pacifica, C-SPAN, you're paying for these things, so you might as well. There's documentaries, all this chaos, confusion about race. There's a documentary that was done by PBS like maybe 15 years ago, Race, The Power of an Illusion. All of this conflict and chaos over something that's made up, right? there's something called the doctrine discovery. I was listening to the brother who was just on, and we try to figure out, why people do certain things. Most people don't know the doctrine discovery, and the Pope just rebuffed it 6 weeks ago, and they haven't said anything in the media. The doctrine discovery was done 600 years ago. It said wherever Europeans go, it belongs to them. It's their possession, and everybody else is inferior to everything about them. Well, that's the doctrine, and indigenous people here call it the doctrine of Christian dominant discovery. And they've been working at trying to get this right. And the Pope just rebuffed it, and nobody even knows about it. And it took a lot of courage for him to do it, because a lot of politics in the Vatican. And I heard he was sick, so he probably said, let me hurry up and do this. I would encourage people, because what it basically, at the end of the day, it says that all of us think from a European perspective, all of us, right? And it takes some work not to, but even if you don't, you still got to know how to, talk to other people. Otherwise you'll be lonely. But I would encourage people, Heist talks about when we had the crash of 2008, Inside Job, the crash of 2008, 13th. Most people are aware, The Merchants of Doubt. I have a list of different movies, COINTELPRO 101. We still have COINTELPRO. We get ready to do Juneteenth, and most people think that was the last time. The last slave plantation that we know of that closed was in 2008 in the Mississippi Delta. But most people think, because, right, some people gave us June 19th, and people don't know their history about themselves. They had no idea that the last slave plantation that we know of, which means it could be some other ones, but this was in the Mississippi Delta. It didn't close. As a matter of fact, there's a documentary, Cotton Picking Truth, still living on the plantation. Of 10 free community showings of things. Listen to this program. This is very helpful. There's a lot of free stuff out there you don't have to spend time on. I think it's important. What else do I want to tell you? I think I pretty much told you that. I do want to read something from Frank Zappa. He was a satirist, and he was a musician. And this is what he said. He said, civics was a class that used to be required before you could graduate from high school. You were taught what was in the United States Constitution. And after all the student protests and rebellions in the 1960s, what does that tell you? We don't want you to know jack, right? After all the student rebellions in the 1960s, this is kind of small, so bear with me. Oh, it was it was banished. Banished is strong, not just removed, it was banished. Don't ever bring it back again from the student curriculum, and was replaced with something called social studies. Here we live in a country that has a fabulous constitution and all these guarantees, a contract between the citizens and the government, but nobody knows what's in it. And so if you don't know what your rights are, how can you stand up for them when somebody else is shredding them? And that's what's going on right now. So I just want to thank you guys for giving me the time to be able to go through that.
Well, let's talk about a little bit about what's going on now with the budget, and what does it mean that this negotiation between the Republicans and the Democrats. And go ahead.
All right. First of all, the Democrats could have done something before the Republicans were sworn in. They had a Democratic Congress and a Democratic Senate. So they could have taken care of this then. That's the first thing. They wait until afterwards. When they had a lame duck session and all they had to do was handle their business. And if they didn't, they still had the opportunity to use the 14th Amendment. I was listening to a James Grauben. He's with the LBJ Lyndon Baines Johnson School of Public Affairs. They could have used the 14th Amendment, which basically says that it mandates that all the government's financial obligations must be paid regardless of whether or not Congress authorizes. They did not have to go into negotiations. So what's up with that? All right. So the results of it so far, and I haven't read the bill, is that it increased the military budget. It's strange how we can find money for people, but at the same time, it decreased support for poor people, primarily people in their 50s, which is a catch-22 because you're not ready for Social Security, right? You're not quite ready, and that's age discrimination. You have a lot of things happening at that point. Also, it allocates money for a Mountain Valley pipeline, right? That, and I can tell you that was to get what's the senator's name from West Virginia, Manchin. That was a deal to get his vote. Somehow he's like president number 2 because they do everything to pacify him. The other thing is that it does a couple of things to the student loans, which the student loans are the second largest household debt. And what people don't know, basically that impacts Black and brown women. Those student loans are basically proportionally, they're more Black and brown women with those loans. What it will do is they codified, they made it into law to end. If this passes the way, if the president signs off, it will end the pause, the freeze that was put on after COVID as a result of COVID. It would put a pause on it, and it will also make it a law so that it will be against the law for them to ever freeze it again.
Wow.
Never, right, to freeze the loan payments. And there's millions of brown and Black people who are impacted, who have to take out loans because they think the American way, let me get a loan and take care of that. So it's really, I had a couple of things. Let me just give this to you really quickly. All right. If not, basically they can, again, I suspect that the military industrial complex has a lot of control over elected officials in Washington, and very powerful group. And they actually made sure, and sometimes I understand the Pentagon didn't even ask for more money. The other thing I talked about, decreased support for people working for the poor. So the first one I suspect was the result of military industrial complex, all those military companies, particularly, and in addition to the one that is 49% owned, 49% owned of MSNBC. Because they're owned, last time I heard 49% they're owned by Westinghouse and 51% by Comcast, unless it's changed. They're always buying and selling. So that's possible. The fact that all these people are going to lose their benefits is the poor. I think that's unconscionable. Unconscionable.
This hasn't passed. Has it passed yet?
Yeah, it passed today, but he still has to sign on it.
Okay. Yeah,
he still has to sign on it.
It passed.
He what? Yeah, it passed.
So it went through. It passed in the Senate. Now it's going to the president's desk.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And he had until the 5th. It was interesting that it went from the 1st to the 5th. All right. The other thing is, I suspect that the decrease in funding, I was telling some people, the Mountain Valley, I know that's clearly Senator Manchin, to get his vote. And the other one, the student loans, has a lot to do with the influence of Wall Street. Because, when I went to school, I'm trying to think, loans were like 1% interest. 1% interest on the loans. Well, first of all, when I went to Rutgers, it was $15 a class. It was $45 a class, $15 a credit. When I went to law school at Rutgers, it was $750 a semester. That wasn't room and board. Right. And so I'm saying the cost of living went up. And now you got people with loans of 50, 60,000. And the fact is they can go after your Social Security. So you got people on Social Security that went to school who may have loans that they still have to pay, and they will deduct from their Social Security. So I think it's unconscionable. Now, as I said, the Democrats had 2 options. They didn't have to do it, or they could have addressed it in the lame duck session. They didn't have to wait till Republicans came in. They could have voted on it then. And I heard recently from a progressive who was just making excuses. So all of this deal that happened didn't have to do. Now, I believe that, if I'm correct, that this whole thing, this fight over the debt ceiling, was never a fight until Barack Obama came in. Before, it was just pro forma. Everybody's like, okay, let's just do this. Right? Now, then all of a sudden it became a thing. So it's interesting. There's a gentleman.
Afterwards, just say no to Obama. Just say no.
There's a gentleman by the name of Braxton Brewington. He works with the debt collector. The debt collector really came out of Occupy Wall Street. It was, it kind of rolled out of Occupy Wall Street. And some of the things they do is buy the debt of people who have debt because of medical bills. That's a whole nother problem. But they're really active in terms of trying to put the pressure on Biden to strip that piece that makes the pause illegal to ever do that again. So, they're asking people to call their Congress people and say, you can't approve that because it's going to hurt the community. Particularly, one of the populations is more likely to vote for the Democrats, right? So they're saying, and also the environmental population, because a lot of young people in that, because they're basically saying, listen, you guys are going to be gone. We're going to still be here. So this is a problem. This is a problem. So, if this was the only way to do it, that would be different. But there were at least two options. You can go 14th Amendment and say, I don't care what Congress is going to do. Or what they could have done if they wanted to have a vote is they could have moved on it during the lame duck section. So what does that tell you? I'm not going to ask for your answers. I'm just going to tell you to think. All I ask people to do, and I tell my students, don't believe anything I say. Do your own homework, because I want you to think for yourself. And the problem is we've been letting too many people think for us. So, from a civics point of view, it's really critical that people learn, and not to get information, no, to get knowledge and hopefully wisdom, and then, figure out things. I mean, they have critical thinking for everything else. People have critical thinking for figuring out how I get a $500 pair of sneakers when I only have $250. So if you can critical think for that, you can critical think for this, because this is going to give you more power, and it may not seem like a lot, but it's when you have people and they're all understanding what the situation is and what their power is. One of the reasons why you had two papers, and I'll say this and you guys can ask questions. There was a paper called Crisis in American Democracy, and that was written in response to the rebellions, the women's movement, the anti-war movement, the Black Power movement, the freedom movement, the young lords, the Mexican. And it was basically, how dare young people think they're entitled to a democracy? This was written in 1973. 1973, 1971. The other one is the Powell Memorandum.
And I'm sorry to cut you. And look
That's
at in Wisconsin right now, they're trying to increase the age for voting because the young people came out in such great numbers. So now they want to. So they come out and vote. Now they want to say, "Oh, now let's increase the age of voting."
It's voter suppression. Redistricting is voter suppression. All of these things that, and it's, to me, because I'm an independent, it doesn't matter to me. I see it on all sides, right? I see everybody involved in the redistricting. When you have Democrats and Republicans equal numbers and they making decisions, or when you just have Republicans and they redistrict so it can look a certain way, then that's voter suppression. When you try to keep young people from voting, right? When you want them to have certain IDs, like their college ID is not good enough, but they got loans for $25,000, $30,000, $50,000, but their ID for the college is not good enough. Voter suppression. So, the only way this is going to, we overcome this is, when you go to school board meetings, you need to demand that they have civics in the school, and not a neoliberal version. And some people don't know what neoliberal is or neoconservative. You have conservatives, liberals, progressives, neoliberals, neoconservatives, right? And going back to the language of politics, they mean something different. Neoliberals, neoconservatives, basically conservatives tend to be controlled by the oil industry, and the neoliberals tend to be controlled by Wall Street. It seems strange that nobody is controlled by the people, and they do everything possible to keep the people from knowing how to control them. Right? They manufacture the consent. There's a word called manufactured consent. It kind of comes out. And if people don't know, please do your research and research Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays was the, hi Rhino. Edward Bernays was the, I guess you could say, the modern architect of propaganda, which spelled out to advertising, commercials, marketing, public relations, spin. He was Sigmund Freud's nephew. He used Sigmund Freud's psychology, and he did a couple of quick highlights. First of all, he got the general population, because Black folks weren't part of the general white economy. We were kind of separate, separate and equal. And what he did is convince people to, this is the beginning of the consumerism. He got people to buy things, not what they needed only, but let's expand that to what you want. Then he went from that. He convinced us to go into World War I. He got women to smoke cigarettes, because he said that a cigarette to women, this is around the area of the suffrage, women are trying to get the vote. And what he what he does, he gets, I call it the Beyonce impact. He gets the debutantes or the granddaughters of the wealthy robber barons, is what we call them, the Vanderbilts, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, doing Easter parade. And Easter parade was a really big deal. People got all dressed up. It's just a really big deal. Even during my lifetime, it was really big until very recently. And they pull out a cigarette, and that's supposed to be to help women have the same power that men have with men's, and I'm going to say this nicely, their reproductive appendage. Did you like that? Did I do well? So men have a reproductive appendage that women don't. And so the cigarettes were supposed to make women to give them the same power, right? And he worked from World War I or before World War I. And as a matter of fact, how he got people to start buying things they wanted versus in addition to what they needed, he used, going back to stars, the silent film actors and actresses. I'm into silent film. And it was a famous person by the name of Mary Pickford. And he used her to convince people, you want to buy stuff other than what you need. His hardest job was to get women to use cake mix. And I just happened to be around during that time in the 50s and the 60s, because the socialization with women is so strong that, you know, if you weren't, and everybody cooked scratch, because we didn't have we didn't have all these fast food restaurants. You had, the only place we had was White Castle. That was the only thing. And nobody went there more than like maybe once a year. But we didn't have fast food. We didn't have all that. So he was trying to get women to use cake mix, and they were just so resistant because they didn't feel they were conforming or that they were actually carrying out their responsibilities as a woman in the household. So what he did is they decided the only way we're going to get them to buy into this is they have to be contributing. So they created the environment where they could contribute an egg and milk. And then later on, we found out you didn't need the egg and milk, but that was just a way to convince the women to accept this cake mix in a box thing. So Edward Bernays, if you want to know where, again, he has I believe he did a book called Propaganda. He's very good with group think, getting people to do stuff because other people did it, but he wasn't good in terms of individuals. So I encourage people, because the marketing, the ability to get American public to manufacture consent, to get them to act against their own interests, he's the architect of that. I call him the modern architect. So
what I will say in marketing, I and DJ Rhino, we talk about it all the time, how, you know, if you go back, I guess, to the Sugar Hill Gang or whatever a person wants to define as the beginning of hip hop, they only said it was a fad. But now every commercial has some form of hip hop, you know, and that's how they're marketing. Everybody is marketing. Captain Crunch is 60 years old. I'm listening to I'm walking by the TV.
Yeah, 50 cents.
Yeah, and they did.
Well, Donna, I know I'm getting ready to go, but let me just tell you, there's a professor, Carlton Payne. He's in charge of the prison system in Pennsylvania. I had him on the station, the radio station that I do. He did a whole thing. The reason why they're using that music, it's not just because of the music. It's a certain beat. There's a book called The Weaponization of Hip Hop, right? What happened to the soul? And as a matter of fact, in 1972, Harvard University did a report about co-opting Black music. The chess records during the 50s was already doing certain things, but Harvard University, it's the Harvard report in 1972. So what happened? Carlton Payne talks about, that's not his book, someone else did the book, but he talks about how that beat is a way to weaponize the sound. And he talked about the psychology of the sound. So it's not just the music. It's just not the fact it's hip hop. Hip hop has a certain beat that allows them to have a certain influence over this population. Because you're talking about, I'm saying for the most part, you're looking at the group that falls in between after post heroin and crack cocaine. So you're talking about 55 years. So that music is designed to get people to do certain things. And remember, I said Carlton Payne is a psychologist. He was the former head of the Black psychologists, and he's the head of the prison system. And maybe you should have him on, since this is hip hop, so he can come on and just explain to you the nuances, how critical that beat is. So you're hearing it, but they're playing it not so much to make other people wealthy because they get paid when you hear the sound, but it's addictive, but it also has a psychological effect on young people. And that's more of why they're doing it.
And
Hi,
that's why
Reno.
that's why it's important for the message on top of the beat to be correct. Because I mean, look at the late '80s, early '90s when we had a good 5 year span of conscious music, real strong conscious music.
Can't do that. You ain't having that anymore.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
once they caught on, they stopped that. They stopped all
Right.
that.
They,
Yeah.
well, yeah, and his
And
book
they
was
changed they found a
exactly
way to change the message on top of
right.
that.
But the music still had a certain psychological impact. So
Right.
you're absolutely right. Everybody who's doing conscious, they said, "Well, wait a minute. Remember before you came on, I talked about the fact of reaction civics and how they took it out in reaction to the freedom movement. And people say civil rights, but civil rights fell under the freedom. And think about the language. When somebody says freedom movement, that has a whole different ring than civil rights.
Right.
Right. Well, listen, I'm going to go. Donna, thank you so much for giving me this time. I owe you, girl.
You can't go. You can't go before Rhino asks you a question. So DJ Rhino, ask that question.
All right, Professor Carter, you I'm sure you already know what this question is, but what are you listening to, or what inspires you coming out of hip hop?
The thing that inspires me, because I just recently found out that Biggie and Tupac, basically, from what I understand from reliable sources, that the reason why they died is because they wanted to do what the music industry is doing now. Oh, by the way, in case you didn't know, the music industry is heavily invested in the prison system, going back to
Oh,
that
yeah.
music. But the reason why they died is because they wanted to control their own music. And that's not what they were happening. Going back to what you said, you had conscious hip hop, right? So Tupac and Biggie still, like, their music will probably be around, like some of the old soul music. It's going to be around forever because of what they were saying. And particularly for Tupac, because his mom was involved in the Chicago, it's such a history around him.
Yeah.
Not that other people don't have the history, but he has a history that he wasn't part of. I mean, his mother was actually in court without being a lawyer defending herself when she was pregnant with him.
Mm-hmm.
So Tupac still reigns, and I still use his music. I have a documentary of him in prison, that to hear him talk about the communities and what needs to do and the challenge that he was having. But knowing that him and Biggie are there because they had decided that they wanted to control their own music. And all this other stuff we keep hearing, especially on the internet, on social media, because people don't do their own homework. They rely on what other people say. Listen, Reno, we never met before.
We
But
did.
you know what? I'm going to put you in the club
It was
of.
Rhino.
All right, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
What we're going to do, what I'm looking to do, Donna. Hello?
Say that again.
Okay, what I'm looking to, I'm getting ready to go, but I just wanted to tell you that I'm
Tell
putting
Rhino.
together, Rhino, at the end of, can you guys see me or whatever?
Yeah.
The end of the
Mm-hmm.
year, I call it, and you guys are really, because of your ages, it's called, wait a minute, I always, and I got this, the elders in training. Elders in training, because I'm finding, particularly those of you 55 and younger, who, and not individually, but there's so many people, especially, and I do adoptions for the state. There's so many, the number of young people who have come through and aged out of the adoption system, who have no direction. And when they're involved in whatever, chaos or whatever, everybody's upset with them. But they don't have the same roots that I have. I have the same roots or similar roots to my great-great-grandmother, but that's not what they have. My normal is different from their normal. So it's not something I want to take on. I'm really looking for young people to step up. I'll kind of kick it out, but I don't want to be responsible. It needs to be something that goes forever to make up for the fact that we don't have the roots in our community. We don't have the cultural protections that we had before. They're no longer here. The fact we don't trust each other, we don't know each other's, we don't know neighbors. I mean, we had a very African cultural. I'm growing up in the projects in the city of Newark. When I talk to people who grew up in Nigeria or Uganda, they had a comparable. Their communities were comparable to mine in the heart of the city of Newark. It was collective. We all looked out for each other, even though you didn't have anything. You shared whatever you had. If you had nothing, you would share what you had, right? And that's not something that a lot of young people have ever experienced or could ever imagine. Maybe in their families or maybe on their block, and holistically, it's not happening. So I came up with this thing thinking about how I grew up. You guys used the word intergenerational. We lived intergenerational. We lived intergenerational for thousands of years. We lived communal, collective, and social. But now you have this capitalism that we bought into. You know, when we first heard, me and my girlfriends, we all grew up in the projects. When we first heard somebody getting killed over an 8-ball jacket, we couldn't believe that somebody could get killed over a thing, right? And now it's like no big deal. But that's not the way. So we need to get back to our roots. And the only way we can do it is prepare those who, and I say 55 and younger, because heroin, the influence of heroin and crack cocaine, which nobody has ever written policy about young people that has taken that into consideration. And they're not going to do it because it's not profitable. You're going to have to do some work. If you have to recognize that there's 2.5 generations. That's a grandfather, a son, and a child. In terms of time, you almost got three scores, right? 60 years. We only have 60 years of the influence, and nobody wants to talk about it. So we need elders in training. And so I'm looking to do something where we could take a virtual space where older people could just come and talk about whatever, and young people come. Not that young people don't have anything to say, because you do have a lot to give, but to hear the stories and just pass them down. We don't do stories. We don't talk to each other like that. What I'm doing now is I could walk outside in the project, somebody 90 years old sitting next to me. We just having a conversation. And that's how
we
I
used to do. That's how we used to do. When I used to live in
That's
Harlem,
how yeah, exactly.
I used to sit on the stoop with the old heads and just
And what I did, how I learned about politics, when I was 12 years old, I was protesting Vietnam because 18, 19, and 20-year-olds who were my elders coming back from Vietnam because they had been drafted, they only did one tour for 6 months. That's all you did. And the economy was pretty good, so you didn't have to stay forever. But I can tell you that they taught me and they encouraged me to protest Vietnam, coming back. And the connection to heroin for the guys coming from Vietnam, and the connection between the FBI and organized crime and what's happening in our community. Nobody talks about that. And crack, and how the CIA was purposely bringing it to these cities, and why people are immigrating from Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Guatemala, and how that's connected to the crack that was in our communities. Nobody talks about that.
And nobody talks about the post-traumatic stress of the crack era, what people had to go through, you know?
And we still, yeah. I mean, looking at the fact of the rate of young children who have been sexually assaulted because there was no one there. If their mother was getting high, there's no Miss Brown to take your children to. You're trying to be a mother, which Kaleena, I know as a mom, that's a powerful force. You're trying to be a mother and you have an addiction. You're sick, right? Because you could be sick now the opioids. So, you know, if you're on drugs, you could be sick now. Before you was inhuman, but you could be sick now. You got this powerful motivation to have your children with you, but you can't be high and do that at the same time. So people are taking advantage of your children. And so we have a number of young people who have been sexually assaulted and nobody's considering this. Mm-hmm. Anyway, well, it was nice being here.
Well, thank you, and we will see you again. And DJ Rhino, I'm sure he would be happy to come sit and participate on anything that you ask of us. And generational, what you just said, I know in my community. In my community, it was very common to see 3 or more generations within, you know, across the street with doors away from each other.
Right, you know, just sitting on the benches.
That's right.
So all of you are going to be, so get ready, Kaleena, because you know you got skills. So Donna, all of you are part of my elders in training. You know, I work with some guys. They're called themselves returning citizens. That's what they are, returning citizens. And I'm recruiting them as all of you are elders in training. So you have to make sure that the generations that come after you get their roots back. See ya.
Love ya.
Peace, Queen. Yes.
So what's up, DJ Rhino? What's going on in hip hop? And let's start off with that shirt.
Oh, Cypress Hill. Today is Be Real. Be Real's birthday. Be Real from Cypress Hill. Cypress Hill is a group that came out of the streets of Southgate, California, back in '91, I believe they dropped How I Could Just Kill a Man, and it's Be Real. The group is Be Real, DJ Muggs, Send Dog, and also a brother named Bobo that's down with them also. But big ups to Cypress Hill and Happy Born to Be Real. That's what the shirt was for.
Okay. And what's and I know we had left off last week, and you had put up prayers for Jamie Foxx, and you had cautioned all of us to fact check what you read and make sure that you just don't believe what is out there in the media.
Mm-hmm.
And you started there. We have any updates on that?
Not on Jamie. I mean, from what I heard, what I said last was his daughter said that he was recovering, he was home, he's active. You know what I mean? So everywhere else is saying something else, but his daughter is saying that he's doing, he's getting better. You know.
Okay.
Another thing I wanted to report on, again, usually I don't like reporting on stuff that's outside of the music, outside of the culture, but this brother is kind of like personal to my heart. Jam Master Jay, they said that they found a third suspect in the murder of Jam Master Jay. He was one of the three individuals that was seen going into the studio and coming out, fleeing the studio right after the shootout took place. And so they just caught up with him. So it's a third. So I'm not going to put his name out there yet, but it's a third suspect that's been caught in the Jam Master Jay murder. So that's positive news. We can't get the brother back, but that's positive news.
And that's over. That was what October 31st, right, or October 30th? Wasn't it around Halloween or something?
Yeah, I believe so. It was, 2002.
And yeah, 30, almost 20. Oh gosh, and we still haven't solved that crime.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah. So that's
and 50 years of hip hop is all the anniversaries are popping up all over. I know down in Atlantic City, June 16th, they'll have a big and I know the first thing they shut off was going to be there was the Sugar Hill Gang. I know one of the members of the Sugar Hill Gang is no longer with us, I believe.
is gone.
Yeah, but so rest in peace. But
Are you sure that's the 16th? I thought it was the 17th.
It could be the 17th.
Because I know at Atlantic City, that's sport, man. Yeah. That list, that line is so long, it's so deep. I'm like, man, they're gonna have all of the people there in one spot, at one time.
And I think it's gonna be nice because it's gonna be a generation. I mean, you might have the young heads here, but you're gonna have that mid like 40 and up, 35 and up generation. So I think it'll be a nice event. I think it'll be really nice.
Yeah, and then of course, August 5th is the Rock the Bells Festival.
And where's that going to be at?
That's going to be in Forest Hills.
Okay. Outside in
Queens, New York.
Okay, is that one of the Summer Jam events, or this is a paid event?
That's Rock the Bells. This is LL's Rock the Bells. This is the second one.
Okay.
First one was last year. This one is going to be a little bigger because they're going to be tributing the sisters this time as well. So there's going to be Queen Latifah. There's going to be Yo-Yo, MC Light, Salt and Pepper. There's going to be a slew of sisters that's going to be there, along with Slick Rick, Big Daddy Kane, Busta Rhymes. It's going to be a whole bunch of people, man. It's going to be bigger than last year, and that's August 5th. Another thing that's going on August 5th, that same day, I don't have the location. I don't have the location in front of me, but it's in New York. It's Rod Digger and Sa Rock. They're going to be performing together as well. I don't know if you know about Cyrock. Like, not everybody knows about Cyrock. She's one of
Yes, you been to you went to her event was it
no,
last year?
not Cyrock. I'm talking about
Oh,
Cyrock.
okay,
SA-ROC.
okay.
Cyrock. Right, at the winery. It's going to be at the winery in New York. Rod Digger and Cyrock. Cyrock, I believe, is originally from DC, but she is she's a force.
DJ Rhino, you start talking about hip hop and Congressman Payne shows up. Look at that.
But yeah, so she's just crazy with it, man. I mean, I feel like a lot of rap artists are afraid of her because a lot of them don't bring her up. And I know some people don't know, but I'm sure a lot of them know, but they just don't want to bring her up because she's a force to be reckoned with. But it's good to see Jersey's own, Brick City's own Rod Digger is going to be rocking with her, on August 5th. And I'm going to be there to check that out. So definitely going to check that out.
What's one of her? Can you tell one of her songs off the top of your head?
One of the songs off the top of my head. Well, there's one called "Assassination." That's the one I always play. She's just spitting. She's rocking over. It's like a Black Moon sample, something that Black Moon sampled. So like the Black Moon record instrumental that she rocked over. But the lyrical delivery and what she's saying is so powerful, so strong, and I really feel like this is somebody that would be along the lines of a Black Thought, along the lines of a Kendrick Lamar. Like that's her level. You know what I mean? She's really good. She's really strong with it.
Yo, you got it. You got it with you, Rhino?
I don't have it. Well, I do have the stuff on. We can't play it on YouTube though. But I got it. I got it. I got a bunch of her stuff.
I hear you.
Yeah. But speaking of Cyrock, when you brought up Cyrock, Donna, Cyrock has her Cyrock Day tomorrow. Tomorrow at in Magenta Park in the Bronx. This is gonna be number 3. I went to the first one the year before last. I went to the first Cyrock event. Again, Rod Digger, Brick City's own Rod Digger. She is she was the host of the first one. She was the host of the last one. She's going to be the host of this one too this year. So Rod Digger's going to be hosting. But Cyrock Day, it's the first Saturday of every June of every year. Starting, since a couple of years ago, the first Saturday of every June. That's Cyrock Day now. So that's what it's going to be. So that's going on tomorrow, Magenta Park in the Bronx. I believe. Let's see. I believe it starts around 2 p.m. tomorrow. So make sure y'all are in the house, man. The first one I went to, I'm not the type to take pics with celebs. Like I'm really not one of those dudes. A lot of people like to, take selfies with celebs and all of that stuff, pictures. I never, ever, ever. My boys could tell you I never do that. But that day, I had to, man. To claim yourself hip hop and to be around all of those iconic pioneers, man. I went crazy. I took pictures with everybody I can get pictures with that day. The only one I couldn't get a picture with that I was trying to get a picture with was Grand Wizard Theodore, the father of the scratch. But I'll catch him another time. But again, Cyrock Day tomorrow, 2 p.m. Magenta Park, Boogie Down Bronx. Be there. And that's it. That's it for me. Tomorrow, of course, 3 p.m. Twitch.tv/RhinoCMZ. We'll get on there with some vinyl. We're going to rock it out. Hawk!
Peace, everybody.
What's good, brother?
Congressman.
Hakeem.
Donna. Peace, Queen. What up, Rhino?
Peace.
So, I got the next day for you. Your chance to meet Theodore.
Okay.
So right now, we're in the midst of organizing the 50th anniversary of hip hop block party at Cedar Park, August 12th.
Woo!
Led by KRS-One.
Oh man.
All right.
So yeah, we're knee deep in putting that together right now. So you already know Theodore, Flash, Chuck D,
all the big heads.
all the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll make sure you get in contact with Theodore.
All right. That's what's up.
And of course, everybody's welcome. We're celebrating 50 years of hip hop culture and Cedar Park with KRS-One.
Yeah.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
Congressman Payne, what's going on, brother?
Oh man, I can't call it. Back to the bricks after being down in DC. They ran us down there quick.
Yeah.
Came home last weekend and they called us on Sunday night, said we got to come back and save the country. So we went and did what we needed to do, and everybody's going to be continue to get their checks, and the government will be paid, and the soldiers will be paid, and you know, we did what we needed to do. So, and now I'm back home.
Nice.
Thank God for Amtrak.
The ride to DC is not too bad, though. It's
not bad at all.
You know,
not bad at all.
Work of the people.
Absolutely.
Professor Carter was just on, and she was schooling us on the details of that bill, and now it's on the president's desk, and you know, so we're glad that there's no shutdown happening.
Yeah. And to be honest, we you know, as Democrats, we did better than we thought we would. We're kind of laughing at the Republicans. They were going to do us in and do us dirty, and we laughed. We ended up, we got more people on SNAP. We got some provisions that they didn't, you know, they didn't see. They did expand the age of work. It's up to 54 now. We're 49. But now, if you're able-bodied, you have to work till you're 54, which the work provision's already been in place, you know, since the 90s. So, I mean, just to move the age, I mean, you know, that's really a win. They wanted to do everybody like to 70 till you couldn't stand up anymore.
Yeah.
But you know, we kept them, we held them down. They added 6 years. So, you know, that's a win really with what they wanted to do. So we're happy with the bill. They're laughing thinking they did something. We're laughing knowing they didn't do a thing to us. So,
what about the student loan forgiveness? A pause on student
that wasn't in there, but we're continuing to fight. And Ayanna Presley made it clear. The CBC, Congressional Black Caucus, meets every Wednesday for lunch to discuss our issues, where we are and what have you. And Ayanna Presley brought it up, and she, you know, we're with her, but she made it clear that she's not giving up that fight. And, you know, that's something that we need to get over the finish line. And we all agreed with her. We're with her. We told her, no, you ain't the only one.
Yeah.
We get it. So, you know, but you got to pick your fights at different times. So, you know, we're gonna get it done.
So, what are the things that have been important to you? You know, that you're unmovable about, that we should all be paying attention to, so that we're prepared to back you up if needed.
Well, you know, a lot of my work, it's funny. I'm a Homeland Security and transportation infrastructure, and I do more health disparity work than anything else. I'm not on that committee, but you know, for my community and my people, it's something that needs to be addressed and make sure we stay on top of. Right now, you know, I was proud to be, you know, I don't get a lot of credit for it, but I was one of the major movers of getting the price of insulin to be capped at $35. You know, that was a major win in this country, and
absolutely,
it had a lot to do because I would tell my story. You know, I have to take insulin, so you know, it was personal when I went to the floor, and you know, it brought a lot of gravitas and weight to the argument. You know, here's a member that's standing up. No, I'm not talking about my community. I'm talking about me.
That's right.
Who I look like my community, but I'm here for my community on this. And so I'm very proud of that. I mean, do you know what that means to people's lives?
Absolutely.
Can't charge more than $35, which something I don't know. You never heard the story, but I left my insulin in Newark one time, and I was in DC, so I needed the insulin. So I went to the drugstore that we use in Washington, and said I need my insulin. And they said, okay, well, Mr. Payne, your insurance isn't ready to pay for it. I said, I'm not worried. I don't worry about I'll just pay for it. I'm doing all right. I'll pay for it. So she comes back, gives me the bag, and she says, now it's a vial about this big. It's a month, but it's about that big. She goes, $375, sir.
Wow.
Now just think of the grandmothers and the
absolutely,
the single moms that have to come up with that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But now we have reduced that to $35. So I could retire now based on doing that, and what that means for diabetics, and people that use insulin all across this country.
Yeah.
So,
the difference between life and death. It's literally the difference for many people between life and death. And there are people who probably have died because of the cost of insulin.
Sure. They get half of their insulin and maybe they're taking it every other day because they can't afford the whole thing. So, I mean, it's dicey. It's life and death, as you said.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've picked up on, I do a lot of work in colorectal cancer, and from that work doing that, I'm a national spokesperson for Fight Colorectal Cancer. I've been doing that for 10 years, and but doing that, other groups have come to me. So now I'm like the cancer dude. So I mean, I'm dealing with breast cancer and prostate cancer, and they all come to me now for support, and I do it because I know what it means.
Yeah.
I had a nuclear family of 4: my father, my mother, and my sister Wanda. I have a second sister, but she didn't grow up with us. Do you know my nuclear family has all died from cancer?
Wow.
Just me. My mother's gone, my father's gone, my sister's gone, all from cancer. And so it's something very, very personal to me. But I know what it means across the country. And so I just use myself as an example with all of these issues on how it impacts our communities. So the other thing I'm working on, which is big, is I'm trying to stem the tide of unnecessary amputations in this country. There are too many people getting their foot and their legs cut off when there are other options these days than that. And it's just that, it's prevalent in obviously minority communities and poor communities.
Yeah.
It's a scourge. I mean, and listen, once you get your leg amputated, the average life of a person with an amputation is 5 years.
Wow.
That's crazy.
You don't last 5 years after that.
Why did they say why? Is it mental health or is it just the sickness has progresses?
The sickness progresses, you get more complications, you get despair, you get people that don't have the will to live anymore.
Yeah.
You always need somebody to help you, help you get dressed, help you go to the bathroom, help you, and it's a very psychological factor, but because of the complications, it's the average of 5 years, and that's terrible. Yeah. So that's the thing I'm really working on is getting people to understand that doctors need to check your feet. When you go to the doctor, have them check your feet, because that's the first area where you start to get low circulation. Me being a diabetic, it comes on naturally, so I have to be careful. And so, in me worrying about my feet is how I got involved in that. And then seeing that the number of amputations there were in the country, it's absolutely a pandemic as well. That's Civil War medicine. That is Civil War medicine. To cut an amputation, they've been doing that since the Civil War. Yeah. There are so many different techniques and remedies that are available now. Now they can go in and reopen your veins. They can revascularize your system where the veins are closed and don't get blood. They can go in now like Roto-Rooter, clean them out, and then you got blood flow back to those extremities. But in our community, they don't get that.
Yeah.
When I first had my problems with my feet, and I've had major problems with them for a while. I get ulcers all the time, which could potentially go into amputations. More than about 4 times I've had it happen. Right now I'm doing all right, but so I got into like understanding amputation, and but the doctor, for me, Congressman, we got naval doctors. We have a group of doctors that are on top of stuff. Like they're some of the best doctors in the country, obviously. But he said to me when he saw my foot, "We're gonna do everything we can to save your foot," and that was his attitude. What happens to the young brother that been walking around for 2 months and his foot hurts, and then he looks and it's starting to turn color, and then it turns purple, and then he gets scared, so he goes to the emergency room. The emergency room on Saturday is full at UMDMJ, so the doctor's running around trying to see as many people as he can, and he's only got a minute or two for each one. He sees that brother and says, "Oh, your foot has to come off," and goes off to the next.
Yeah.
Everybody should have the doctor say what the doctor said to me.
Right.
Everybody in this country should have that doctor say that to them. And that's what I'm fighting for.
Wow.
And, I wonder if there's even what you're hearing about the number of particularly Black people who are pre-diabetic, and how we can improve healthcare around that. I'm personally pre-diabetic, and I'll tell you, it seemed like that would be a red flag, that doctors would take that very seriously. You're pre-diabetic. Here are the things that you need to do. But what I found is over the last couple of years, they just say, "Oh yeah, you're pre-diabetic." And, they move on to the next thing. There really isn't any really solid direction other than diet change, of course, which I've done, and my levels have gone down.
Right.
But, that was with me being a little bit persistent and finding a doctor that I knew would really care for me, because I've had a negative experience when I was pregnant with my son. I was in preterm labor, and my doctor told me, well, I didn't know it at the time, but my doctor told me that I was fine, that what was happening to me was normal. And 3 days later, my son was born, 1 pound, 5 ounces, 11 years ago. So I've learned to be an advocate for myself. But when it comes to pre-diabetes, is there any conversation around how to improve healthcare for those that are on the borderline, and, making sure that doctors take that more urgently so that it doesn't get to insulin and all those other, conditions?
Yeah, we have to definitely, have to do a better job in our community of getting people to understand, what that means and what you're headed for, in the long run. I wish I had listened. The doctor told me, that I needed to curtail, my sugar intake because, I was finding blood in my urine, and that's because of sugar.
Yeah.
And so by that time, that's the red flag. That's your body giving you the emergency sign, like 911. So, believe me, and I've gone through it with diabetes. I have suffered through everything you could possibly think of with diabetes. But, I have these great doctors that have kept me, together. But, I've had some serious battles with my eyesight. My ability to walk straight anymore, all kinds of things. And so diabetes is a monster. I'm telling you, if you're listening, ladies and gentlemen, you do not want to go down that road.
Yeah.
You do not want to go down that road, because I've been down it, and it ain't pretty.
Yeah.
It ain't pretty.
Yeah.
So I'm just fortunate.
A friend of mine just had a big scare. She's on insulin and ordered, I believe on Monday, they sent a refill prescription in. The pharmacy didn't have her prescription. And I don't think she knew how detrimental that could be. They didn't have it for about a week. Now she's right now in the hospital recovering from, what was almost a very bad turn in ICU. Now learning to walk again just because of this, and someone who pays very good attention to her health, but the pharmacy that she goes to did not have it. And I think like a few days into her hospital stay, she got a text message from the pharmacy and said, your insulin is ready, So it's like, it's a serious issue. And a lot of times, I don't know if some of it is genetics, because it's not like your diet is incredibly horrible that creates it. It's just some people have a predisposition to it. But if you get ahead of it with that pre-diabetes, it's really important.
Absolutely.
Changer.
Yeah, no, I please, if anybody's listening, you really got to take that thing seriously, because I mean, I was on the floor of Congress and my eyesight went out, and but I was able to. Right now, I don't want to make anybody squeamish, but every other week I take injections to my eyeball, so to keep my eyesight. So it's serious. It's really serious. So don't go down that road. It's ugly.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I mean, you worked hard, and I think I didn't know that you had diabetes, but I think people just see you going back and forth from Newark to DC and fighting and advocating and, making sure that school projects are funded and just being so active in the legacy of your family as well, that we take for granted that you're human and, you have your own struggles, but we're going to keep you in our prayers that you continue to heal and continue to fight for us. And thank you for not just going through those health challenges personally, but making sure that what you've learned helps to advance policy in this country.
Absolutely. I just use myself as an example, and figuring out what I need, and I know that basically that's what my people need, my community needs. So there's nothing special about me that other people shouldn't have this type of health care. It's what everyone in this country deserves. I mean, this country is great. And, some people scoff when I say that. It is great, but it doesn't work for everyone. And that's what we have to do. It has to work for everyone. It is great, but it doesn't work for all of us. That's what we need. That's what we need to get to. It to work for all of us in the same manner. And that's what I fight for.
Can I read something from Speech Thomas from Arrested Development?
Please.
Okay. I got very sick yesterday on our Arrested Development United Kingdom tour and had to be rushed to the hospital. I was there for 10 hours, chest x-rays, 3 steroids, 2 asthma sprayers, numerous nurses and doctors serving me. On our way out, we asked, where do we pay? There was literally no cost. In the US, that visit alone would have cost over $7,000. I'm much better now. It was free. It was free for us, family. There is better ways to address our issues if we only open our minds to other possibilities.
Absolutely.
Socialized medicine. Yeah.
And it was free, even though he's not a citizen. That's outstanding.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Wow.
Like, what's the greatest?
Where was that?
In the UK, United Kingdom. What's the greatest resource of any nation?
Healthcare, for sure.
Human resource. So we should be investing in human beings first and foremost.
Yeah.
That's why healthcare should be free. Because corporations get rich off of making us sick. From pollution, environmental issues, food issues, stress. But the funniest thing, the weirdest thing I've noticed, right, is everybody hates socialism until the railroad is off the track.
That's right.
Until you need the government, it's bad. Oh, well, it's bad. But as soon as a natural disaster happens, where's the government? Where's the federal government?
Exactly. Hey, tell me about it, Hawk. I'm living that.
Yeah.
Stay out of my life. We don't want you. We don't need you. But we just had the flood,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Politics is got to be, so throughout the years, I haven't been as engaged as I am over the last 10 years. I've been engaged, right? But beforehand, I wasn't, because I didn't know exactly where I was in the government or how government, but now that I got a little bit more information, experience, right? And I understand that infrastructure bill that went down and Build Back Better. A lot of my friends who are now where I was They go, how does that help us? The Democrats don't do anything for us. Where are we? And I mean, man, he just passed a $1.2 trillion. Like, we haven't seen anything like that since FDR. Investment into the people. Like,
and you know what I say, huh? Remember when the pandemic was going on and folks were just getting these $1,400 checks in the mail for nothing?
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome. That was Democrats. That was Democrats. You're welcome. For nothing. Just because you were an American citizen, you received a $1,400 check. And when we worked on the child tax credit, were you able to take advantage of that, Kaleena, the child tax credit?
Think so? Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, some form of it. Yeah.
That took 50. Listen to this. That took 50% of the children in this country out of poverty.
Oh wow. Wow.
But it's not permanent. We're trying to make it permanent.
Yeah.
That means a mother. I forget how much it was. I think you got $200 for every child that was 15 to 18, and $350 for every child that was under a certain age. So think of a mother that has 5 kids. $350, 200. That's like another $1,500 a month. Mm-hmm. Just because. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of things that we do. So when they say that, you have to be a little educated to it, because you gotta be able to try to understand some of it. The American Rescue Plan. I was able to bring home to Newark $481 million during the pandemic, just here. What you need to do with it. The county of Essex, I think I got them $325 million. The county of Hudson got $300 million. Union County got $275 million. And all of the cities in Essex County got money. All the way down I got Glen Ridge money. Even Glen Ridge got money in this deal. Every municipality, town, hamlet in this country received money from the federal government during the pandemic, just to cover whatever they might have going on. Mm-hmm. Newark got $481 million. That's close to their annual budget.
Yeah. I know one of the things that Newark did with those funds was start a guaranteed income pilot, the Newark Movement for Economic Equity, which I've had the pleasure of helping to lead and seeing. And very similar to the child tax credit, it provided about $6,000 of additional income to 430 families for 2 years in Newark.
That's great.
And it's in its final year now. But when I tell you that additional income, when you provide people the money that they need to take control of their lives, they need less government assistance in other places.
Absolutely.
Like one young lady, she's like, in her early 20s. And we interviewed her about the impact of the program on her life. And she said that she was homeless before becoming a guaranteed income recipient, and also struggled with mental health issues. And so that kind of fed into her homelessness. The stability of the guaranteed income pilot allowed her to get housing and provided the transportation to her therapy services. And her mental health is stabilized. She's working. And she said, before I started receiving the guaranteed income pilot, I felt like I didn't have a future, but now I have hope. And so we take for granted, I think people who have money, who have access to resources, take for granted how transformative a child tax credit or guaranteed income can be in the lives of ordinary citizens that don't have access to, people in power and things like that. So I'm always going to be a champion. And I wanted to make sure to mention that, because people receiving guaranteed income need to understand that it's connected to the pandemic funding, which was fought for by a Democratic Congress, so that they can care more about politics and voting. And oftentimes we don't always, make those connections.
But we need to do a better job in getting the message out to and responding to, these millennials. They're a tough crew, boy. I tell you, man. They're a new breed, man. I'm telling you. They don't want to hear nothing. You're old and you need to be out of my way. I keep trying to tell them, look, I finally understand and know what I'm able to do. So now let me do it. I just figured out what to do at this age. So let me do it. You know?
Oh, that point is a very important point, because there's a narrative going around that, quote unquote, old people should lead, right? And I probably had that feeling when I was a little younger. I'm, in my 50s now. But as I get older, I'm understanding that those are the best people to lead because of the experience,
wisdom,
right? And you've made so many mistakes, you know what mistakes to avoid. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, we shine some light on the situation, and I'm just, Biden's getting a lot of critique, even though the other side, his man, a year and a half younger or something like that, right behind him. But they're using ageism as a reason not to vote or not to support certain. I just think it's a bad idea.
Yeah, that's a big question on the Hill about his age and how he's going to be able to get through those next 4 years. But right now, he's the only one that I can see on the scene that can do it. And I'm riding with Biden, so I get out there early. I'm riding with Biden.
It was kind of real savvy how he used the debt ceiling to put McCarthy in a bind. That was real sad. Everybody's like, oh, they got the Democrats shook with the debt ceiling. Yeah. What we gonna do? What we gonna do? And it's like, nah, son, you don't want to hold that bag now, do you? No, he didn't want to hold that bag. They didn't want to hold that bag.
You peeped that one, right?
That was nice.
Absolutely.
That was nice.
But yeah, I'm trying to develop a better relationship with millennials and explain what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and to get them to talk to me. I'm not adverse to I'm your representative, whether you are a millennial or a Gen X or whatever you are.
So what is millennial? What age group is that? Because I'm getting confused.
Hawk, you got to straighten that out for us.
Man, you know what? I'm going to assume 30.
I don't know.
Millennials are like 30 to 45, 30 to 40, something like that.
Yeah, okay, so I'm 40. So you're talking about me, Congressman Payne, a millennial?
I don't know. I just use the terms. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I always thought millennial meant she was born in 2000.
Yeah, 2000, like, something like that.
Okay.
I look at my son as a millennial.
Yeah, that young, they're tough. They are tough, but and they're, I always tell, and that's my specialty of area is young people, college age, high school to 30 are my kids. And, their arrogance is a gift from us because they are smarter. They are more worldly. They have traveled the world. They do know, they are more cultured. They have higher expectations. We can't fault them for that because we created that. All of the things that you fought for in your career, all of the work that has been done has given them the privilege of agency and of confidence. But we want to make sure that they understand that. And so we have to listen to them because they do have a higher expectation than we have because we gave it to them, right?
We did, right. But to that point, then they need to, if they're that bright, they need to understand who allowed them to get that savviness and all of that.
That's right.
You didn't get it on your own. Somebody made it available to you for you to come along and get this knowledge and feel this way. You didn't create it on your own.
That's right.
So, a little respect for the folks, like we say, whose shoulders we're standing on.
That's right.
And they got to realize that they ain't on the ground. They're standing on a whole bunch of people's shoulders.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them haven't had the privilege of for my students, they've been, and I say raised because a lot of the young people that I work with, I've been with them since middle school, and now they're going into adults, and they were raised in these intergenerational rooms and conversations, because Junius Williams is director of Abbott Leadership Institute. You have me. And so with that came their comfort with sitting at the foot of elders and learning from them. And so they have a profound respect and understanding of that. But a lot of other young people don't. And so, you know, I like to listen to them, but then school them and help them to understand, oh, that thing that you're fighting for, do you know? Or what program did you participate in? EOF? Oh, well, did you know that EOF was created because of this? And, you know, and give them the history that they need to understand, you know, where things come from. And
what other culture do you ever see where the elders are just pushed aside?
Right. Absolutely.
Nowhere. No. Please, somebody tell me another group where the elders pushed out.
Right.
You know, and then we you know, we can't fall for this, you know, this Western culture that, you know, puts folks away.
Yeah.
We need to grasp our culture that we came over here with and understand that you sat at the foot of those elders, and what they say had a lot of bearing on what you did.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. They'll learn. They will learn. That's what we say. They will learn over time. They will learn.
Technology, you know, there's life lessons that you get from going through the process.
That's right.
Right. And especially as a DJ, Brother Rhino, you understand from carrying crates to how you put your records in order to having teams with you that help you produce teamwork that gets eliminated because of technology. One person can come up, have all his files right here. Everything's push button technology. That exists in like every aspect of our lives and the way we relate to one another. So even when you said EOF and them not understanding what EOF, they're born into a world that was already here that didn't exist when we were coming up, or when our parents were coming up. It had to be fought for. It had to be, you know, the brain trust had to get together and organize and fight back opposition and use the system to finally get legislation in place to make funding available. That 40 years later, you just wake up and it's there. And it's like, oh, you don't understand what went into kicking down the door.
Right.
You know, so that's like if we could somehow inform them of the old processes that made the new life so easy, possibly they'd have an ounce more respect.
That goes back to what you were saying earlier about the roots, just going back to our roots.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of young people do, you know, I always, sometimes we're in classes and I see that, you know, the instructors are focusing on the 10 students who are not paying attention instead of the 20 that are. And so, you know, I encourage us. Yes, there are. I know what you're talking about because I deal with it. You know, I'm like, Lord, if you don't, you know, it takes a lot of patience. But there are so many young people who have a deep reverence and respect for history, for the past, for elders. But, you know, for me even, because I'm older than them too, they have a deep respect. They have a willingness to learn. And, you know, they're in the crowd as well. So we got to just, all of us in our different spaces, encourage them to make their ways out of the shadows as well, so that people don't think that is, you know, the ignorance represents the whole age.
No, not at all. But see, you have an advantage. You're touching them every day with care and concern for them, and that's, you know, obviously a human being always, you know, moves positively towards that. But I'm a figure on a poster or Facebook page that, you know, they just all hear about politicians and then, well, that's a politician. So all their preconceived notions, you know, are addressed as they look at my face. Oh, he's just out for himself and he ain't doing nothing. And which is, you know, is not my nature. And, you know, I'm very fortunate to be a United States Congressman, and I don't take it lightly. Every day I'm trying to work hard so I can continue in this effort to do things for my community. So, you know, I got some big shoes to follow. So, You know, it's hard work every single day, living up to that and doing what I need to do for my community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see Dr. Capelli's on here mentioning the issues around pre-diabetes and realizing that diabetes can kill them so long as they are in pre-diabetic states. They conclude that they're okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Very true. Very true.
It's very true.
Yeah, I think mine got so bad I bypassed pre-diabetes, and I was having I was already diabetic, so I bypassed my pre-diabetic stage.
Wow.
And woke up one day and the doctor said, "No, you got it, bro."
Wow.
So, but to Dr. Bailey's point, is true. And even like you said, you know, pre-diabetes, you're kind of like, well, I'm okay, but
yeah,
I need to, you know, it's
yeah,
not pressing.
Until Congressman Payne, it wasn't until they said I had high blood pressure. I was like, wait a minute now.
Yep.
I'm too young for that. That's not easy. So when that happened, I got a blood pressure cuff. I have an insulin monitor. I checked, you know, and I changed my diet. I started paying more attention. I got a nutritionist because I drew the line there. You know, you're not going to have high blood pressure. And then as a leader in the community, what does that say about me? If I am, you know, if I am told that I have these issues that could get in the way of my quality of life, that could get in the way of the quality of life of my family if they have to care for me, and I don't take leadership in making sure that I'm healthier. So
that's you know, and that's what I do. I mean, I don't sit here and say you shouldn't get diabetes as bad for you. I tell them I've got it and I'm in bad shape. Don't do what I did.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to preach to them. I'm telling them, look, I'm suffering from everything you don't want.
That's right.
And I'm telling you from experience, you don't want this, and don't, you know, take care of yourself because it's too late for me.
Yeah, and I'll say that one thing about young people is, and I can't speak for all young people, but I'll say a lot of them that I speak to, or that I know, they are more health conscious. They are even if you go into high schools now, you'll see so many young people who are vegetarians and vegans.
Yeah.
They are, you know, they are more conscious about smoothies and water intake. They are definitely, and maybe it's a pop culture thing. Maybe TikTok and has something to do with that. I don't know. But you know, I was in a group of 5 students yesterday, and 2 of them were vegetarian, and these are Black kids from Newark. You know, so I think they're getting smarter. I think it's our age group that has to catch up. And it didn't really become important to me. One is the high blood pressure diagnosis, but second, watching my amazingly charismatic, light of the room, super political, hardworking. My whole life, my father never missed, my whole entire life, and this is no exaggeration, my father never missed a single day of work. He worked 2 jobs.
Oh my God.
Never, there was not a single day that my father did not go to work. And now he has dementia. And to see him completely become a different person, and to be, you know, just inside, of course, is still my dad, but you know, he has dementia, and so he is very dependent. Thank God for my mom who takes care of him. She, you know, she's not in the best of health, and so seeing them in their 60s and 70s deal with these health issues, that has, you know, inspired me to get it together, because it's not a game. So, you know, I want to be healthier in honor of them, because my dad worked. My dad retired because I told my mom, I think you should call and see how daddy's doing on the job. And when she called, his job said, yeah, you know, it's been about a year that we've noticed some change, but we didn't want to say anything because we respect him so much. He should go ahead and retire. And that's how my dad retired, a year into him starting to show signs of dementia. So,
wow. Sorry, Dad.
Well, yeah, that's quite a testimony too. And you know, that whole illness has really brought a heavy bearing on families as well.
Oh yeah.
Getting the type of services that you know, family needs with dementia. you know, somebody has to take up the responsibility. And I guess you said your mother,
Yeah.
and you know, she's got issues she's probably trying to deal with. So yeah, I hope they can do something in that realm soon. It's become more prevalent. You know, like these other illnesses too. All of a sudden, like where was dementia? You know, 25 years ago, I mean, you didn't hear about it. Now you know at least 2 or 3 people that
who have dementia.
Right.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And you can live with dementia for 20 years. And you could be for 20 years unable to feed yourself, go to the restroom on your own, and need care.
Yeah.
So, you know, we really need some attention being paid. I'm just beginning to learn how to navigate the healthcare system around dementia so I can advise my mom, you know, she needs help. She's in her 60s. She can't take care of herself. So yeah. So add that to the list, Congressman Payne.
I know. The list keeps getting longer, but we got to do something. Got to do something in all those areas.
Yeah.
But you know, I really thank you. This was a refreshing panel. Little new, some old. Rhino, Hakeem, and Kaleena, thank you so much.
I don't think we've met before.
The work that you do in the community, you know, you have a name that travels wide and has a lot of respect behind it for your work in the community. And Hawk, you're the ambassador. You're the ambassador to hip hop, brother.
Sure.
You know, listen.
Thank you.
When I step up, I ask you, I tell them I know Hakeem Green, and they go, "Oh, all right, you all right."
I tell them I know Representative Donald Payne Jr. That's what I'm telling people.
All right, listen, we use each other. All right.
There you go. Leverage.
All right.
Yeah, it's about leverage.
Yes, absolutely.
You know,
it's so true.
Yeah, it's better when it's family and friends, but you know, the game that it's about leverage and how to use, you know, unity to make things happen. So
that's what that whole bill was about, leverage. Who could leverage the most out of the deal? And that's what we do every day. Yeah. So that's how you're right, man. It's all about leverage.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm proud to lock arms with you, brother.
All right.
Yeah.
Rhino, my man. Rhino, you know, the Congressional Black Caucus has a legislative week every year in September. And you know, I worked my way up to give like one of the biggest parties of the weekend now. Woo! And DJ Rhino has been down there twice for me, and we're gonna bring him back again this year.
All right.
So we represent Jersey. It's called a new party.
If you need the hip hop ambassador in Newark to come do it specifically, you know I got him.
Absolutely. We're gonna let Shayna tell you about it.
Shayna Mack.
That's
my girl right there.
Yeah. So thank you very much for this week of the Payne Report, and I guess we will see you next month.
Yes, thank you so much, Congressman Payne. Be well.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Take care.
Good luck, brother.
All right. Peace.
Right. Peace.
Well, in those few hours, I wish I was taking notes because between all of the guests, you could just make a list of everything they told you to read, research, look up, and you'd be busy for 3 years learning. So
I was telling my wife we're gonna have to play this back.
Yeah,
just to get our info. Yeah,
and read and learn. You know, so blessed. I mean, I've had the privilege. I got into my work under Junius Williams, and so I've had the privilege to learn from them. That's all I know is listening to the Paynes and Carter and Annette and just all of them, and all of them so different in their leadership, so different in their thinking and understanding, so artistically gifted. I mean, we are just in Newark. I don't know about other cities, but I know in Newark we are incredibly blessed to have so many active elders who are willing to be engaged in community and to be among us and to show up in spaces all of the time. So I'm just loving it. That's
a big part of my pride of this city. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
is that, you know what I mean? The history of it. You know what I mean? We got so many leaders, so many people that's been here and doing the work. You know what I'm saying? And really standing for something, man. And it's been like that for ages. If you really exactly.
Yeah, and willing to teach and empower us, and love on us. Like, you know, will tell you you're great and you're brilliant and put you in rooms and, you know, connect you to opportunity. It's just it's a privilege to be in this space. So I never take it for granted.
Definitely. Any of y'all got any of the last words before we close out?
No.
I'm in the middle of Dear Mama.
What'd you say, Hot?
I'm in the middle of Dear Mama.
Oh yeah. I said
I finally saw it. I finally saw it. I want to see it again, man.
Yeah.
I finally saw it though. It's good, man. It's powerful.
Yeah, is it?
And honestly, no, I can't front, man. After watching the whole thing, when I hear Pac's music now, it gives it more life. It gives it new life. You know what I'm saying? Because recently there's been I don't know, man. It's been some talk about, you know, like people have been talking bad about Pac recently, man. It's almost like, you know, like clowning them and just putting them in a bad narrative, man. But watching that documentary really puts more life into who he was and his legacy and everything, man.
Oh, that's awesome. I gotta check it out.
Definitely check it out. It's deep, man. Big ups to Tupac and Afeni Shakur.
Yeah.
And the Hughes brothers will put it together because they did a tremendous job. Well, they're doing it. I'm in the middle of it. I haven't finished yet, but I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah. Definitely check that out. But that's it for me. I mentioned earlier, tomorrow, 3 p.m. twitch.tv/Rhino CMZ. I'll be on there spinning vinyl, rocking out, and that's it for me. Yeah.
Right.
Kaleena, you got anything?
That's it. Yeah, let's. You know what? I have something. Everybody, our young people have just finished their first year back since the pandemic. Full year in school. They have given all that they have. They have had to get adjusted. They have been made to take state tests, even though they haven't been in school in person for a while. So I encourage all who love young people who are leaving school this summer to give them the best summer possible because they've earned it. So that's my message for today: is love on these kids all summer, celebrate them finishing this school year because the world did not stop for them. They had to get moving. And if they're graduating this year, that means that they did most of their high school career virtually. So pay attention to them when they leave and support them in their college endeavors. Give them money and time and mentorship and, you know, encouragement because it's different. So that's my hard word.
Yeah. We can end on that right there.
Great. Yeah.
All right.
Have a great weekend, y'all.
Peace, y'all. Till next week.